All right.
Beautiful.
Welcome to this edition of Draft Utopia on Restream. I'll mention my top 10 NHL draft gems. I was going to do that last week, but I forgot. A hockey scout messaged me after the show, got very pissed off. I didn't mention my gems. And, I think when it comes to scouting, I don't care if it's the only sports that are 7 rounds are hockey and football. Baseball's 20 rounds. It used to be 40 rounds. But hockey, football, and baseball are really the only sports where you can legitimately find gems. NBA is only 2 rounds. Soccer's only 3 rounds. It used to be 4. So if you're telling me there are gems in basketball and soccer, that's bullshit. The drafts are too short for there to be gems. The drafts are too short for there to be gems. I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be direct with you. Those drafts, you got to make your drafts longer if you want to have gems in that.
That's the quickest the foul language came out of you that I've ever
Yeah,
seen,
but I'm
Chris.
being blunt and to the point. I'm not trying to talk. I'm not trying to have a potty mouth. It's just I'm being blunt and to the point. I'm very blunt and to the point. That's my best and worst quality, especially when I have foul language.
Yeah, I use very foul language. I've actually dropped the F-bomb in court and got away with it.
Okay, I do
Not
have
sure how, but
all right. So the gems, I found 10 gems in the 2025 NHL Draft. How is this going to work? Well, the rules are simple. I'm using NHL Central Scouting's list. I cannot pick a North American skater in the top 100. I cannot pick a European skater in the top 50. I cannot pick a top 5 goalie in North America. I cannot pick a top 5 goalie in Europe. So that means the top 160 players, the top 100 North American skaters, top 50 Europeans, that's 150 out of 224 draft eligible players. And then the top 5 goalies in America and Europe, that's 160 out of 224 draft slots gone. So basically, I have to pinpoint the 64 best players outside the consensus top 160. You can see how that's a challenge, William. You can see how that's a big challenge because you're looking at.
That is why I call you the brain. That is exactly why, man. That's a ton of work, and
yeah. So I came up with a list of 9, and my friend Ash Glover, who's a friend, colleague, scout on the Medicine Hat Tigers, threw a 10th name into the ring. So I'm going to start with Caden Harrington. Caden Harrington is 6'2", 204 pounds. He's listed at 105 on NHL Central Scouting. He is the Lincoln Stars' #1 defenseman. Also, the Lincoln Stars have the #1 seed in the USHL this year. So that is a guy who is slipping through the cracks. You could argue he's slipping through the cracks harder than Will Howard. Not going to say he's slipping harder than Milrow, but
Kyle McCord, man.
Kyle McCord, too. Caden Harrington, 6'2", 205.
Not to mention, I just finished my Quinn Ewers evaluation. And that dude, there's no hype behind him. No one's talking about him. And the dude is fire. He's cleaned up his mechanics. He still throws some dangerous balls and such, but he can easily develop into the starting quarterback. I mean, he's got that talent. The one thing I'm wondering, some of his soft touch passes, I wonder if he might have a little bit of trouble translating to the speed of the NFL. That just happened to cross my mind when I was watching him last night. But like I said, no, Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback, and I have my big 3 that I always do. And this year it actually turned into Big 4. And because I have almost identical grades on Cam Ward and Quinn Ewers. And Jalen Milrow is my QB1. Kyle McCord is my QB2. And 3 and 4 are A and B with Cam Ward and Quinn Ewers. So, I mean, dude can play ball, and he's slipping. He's falling through the cracks. No one's paying attention, man.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see what the bracket looks like for the USHL. And I can't even access the bracket. But yeah, 2025 USHL playoffs. I want to see where Caden Harrington and the Lincoln Stars are in the USHL playoffs. But yeah, we're talking about NHL Draft Gyms. I was going to talk about this last week, but I wanted to do this with William, so we put it off. And I mean, a scout actually gave me crap on Twitter for forgetting this segment last week. But Caden Harrington, 6'2", 205, ranked 105th on NHL Central Scouting. I don't know why he's ranked that low. The Lincoln Stars are the best team in the USHL this year. So they've got a 6'2", 204-pound defenseman. They're the best team in the USHL record-wise. And this guy's ranked 105th. He's the best defenseman on their team, and he's ranked 105th on NHL Central Scouting, and that's among North American skaters. That's not overall. That's among North American skaters. So Caden Harrington has to be the first gem in the NHL draft for 2025. I mean, to get a player that big, who's the best defenseman on the team, who, on the best team in the USHL in North America this year, that a player that good should not be falling as far as they are. So,
yeah. Can he box as well as Doug Smith?
Doug Glatt. Yeah, I know Doug Glatt. That is such an underrated
Smith, the
movie.
real guy?
The Goon is such an underrated sports movie. It's probably the best hockey movie in my opinion. I know Miracle was great.
It is, man.
But Miracle wasn't edgy. Miracle was great from a unity standpoint, but I like edgy movies. Miracle was not an edgy movie. It was a triumphant movie. It was a very empowering movie, but it was not an edgy movie.
I watched Draft Day for the first time the other day, but no, going back to Goon.
You know what?
Man.
Instead of Googling this, I'm going to type in Lincoln Stars and X, find out how far they are in the OHL playoffs. They are the Anderson. Well, they won the Anderson Cup. They are the Anderson Cup is the regular season award, and apparently the final regular season game was last night, but they won their first Anderson Cup since 2003. And Anderson Cup goes to the team with the best regular season record. So we won't get a USHL playoff update for a while. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Next player on my gems list, Luke Blueswick, defenseman, Red Deer Rebels, 6'4", 200 pounds. He's 109 among North American skaters. He's the Red Deer Rebels' #1 defenseman. My friend Ash said he's overrated as a prospect. So I just
that must be Ross, right?
And he's a professional scout. Like, he scouts hockey players for a living, but he's in our football group. So he said
that's who I just invited to be on the show as a scout. He's a college scout.
Awesome.
And we'll see what he says. He's in the middle of his season though, but maybe we can catch him just for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And Blas Schlotler, Owen Schlotler of the Spokane Chiefs is the guy Ash recommended. Spokane Chiefs defenseman Owen Schlotler. That's going to be a hard name to pronounce. Owen Schottler. It's Schottler. Owen Schottler, Spokane
Spell
Chiefs.
It on the comments, bro.
18 points in 18 points in 68 games. Ash said he's a sleeper, but I'm just not impressed with the production. Another defenseman, Maddox Labor of the Victoriaville Tigres. 112 among NHL Central Scouting. He's the left-sided defenseman on the top line of the Victoriaville Tigres. Another Quebec Major Junior Hockey League player, Olivier Growl from the St. John Sea Dogs.
Growl. Hey.
And there's an X in his name, Olivier Growl. His last name ends with an X. Olivier.
Oh, so like Cajun.
It's kind of French Cajun, yeah. But 17 goals, 24 assists, 41 points in 61 games. Those aren't bad numbers for a 6th, 7th round pick. Definitely not my top choice, but Nolan Road, 148 on NHL Central Scouting. He's the Tri-City Storm's first-line center in the USHL. Here is my biggest gem of the draft. William, Joey, you're going to want to write this name down. Jeremy Laranger, left winger, Sherwood Park Crusaders in the British Columbia Hockey League. He's 149 on Central Scouting. Central Scouting has him listed as a center, but he's a first-line left winger on the Sherwood Park Crusaders, and he has a mind-boggling 105 points, which is a team best. Could be the biggest gem at left winger since Jamie Benn in 2007, who is the Stars' fifth-round pick and their eventual captain, or Kirill Kaprizov, the Minnesota Wild's fifth-round pick, who is the Wild's first-line left winger as well as their best player. So Jeremy Loranger, if he can bring that type of production to a more competitive league than the BCHL, Loranger could be a Jamie Benn, Kirill Kaprizov steal where you get that first-line left winger in the fifth round of the NHL draft. It's happened, but it's only happened twice the past 20 years. And this could be the third instance in the past 30 years where third instance the past 2 decades where that happens. So Loranger is definitely a name to watch. That's it for the North American skaters. Liam Danielson, he's 82nd among European skaters. His dad, Bjorn Danielson, was the alternate captain of Brynäs IF from 2005 to 2007. That is name number 8. And then the goalies. I came up with a North American goalie and a European goalie. Carl Axelsson, the Austin Bruins goalie, 183 goals against average, 934 save percentage. Some people think he's the best goalie to come out of the North American Hockey League since former Hurricanes goalie Cam Ward, the 2006 Conn Smythe Trophy winner. He was born in Sweden, and he's going to Minnesota Duluth this fall. Carl Axelsson currently has a 7th-round grade. Could be the Brock Purdy of goalies in this very deep goalie NHL draft. Elijah Nuschenschwander, HC Fribourg Gotteron, entered the preseason with a 3rd-round grade, 909 save percentage in 9 games since getting promoted from the under-20 team to the main roster in Switzerland. And I did see they talked about him on the Steel Flyers goalie show. So, yeah, that's my 10 gems in this year's NHL draft. And that was the challenge. I did not pick a goalie in the top 5 for America or Europe. I did not pick a European skater in the top 50. And I managed to avoid picking any skaters in the top 100 for North America. So that eliminates 160 of the 224 players that are likely to get drafted, limiting me to 64 players that could either go anywhere between rounds 4 and 7, which is a big challenge from a scouting standpoint to pinpoint those gems. I would say it's harder to do that in hockey than football, but regardless of whether it's hockey or football, it's very hard to find gems in rounds 4 through 7.
Yeah. Yep.
Joey, William, you want to add anything to that? I mean, I could continue to bore you guys with hockey news, but that was what the OHL draft was for. But I've got some news on I've got some hockey news and I've got some football news, and then we'll get into the WNBA draft. The hockey news involves Cannon Thibodeau being drafted by the Barrie Colts. Now, Cannon Thibodeau, he had 5 goals in a game, first player since Ivan Demidov in last year's draft to do that. But Cannon Thibodeau, he's got a tough choice. Do you go to the Barrie Colts in Ontario, or do you go play for Team USA's national hockey team, the U.S. National Team Developmental Program? They pick the best American-born skaters between ages 16 and 18. They play there, and then once they're old enough and they get drafted and they graduate high school, they go to college. That's basically what the USNTBD does. But they're a powerhouse when it comes to developing talent. You look at the talent they've developed. They developed Logan Cooley. They've developed Jack Hughes, the New Jersey Devils, #1 pick in the 2019 draft. And, USNTDP really didn't begin to pick up traction until Jack Hughes went #1 in 2019. But once he did, it became a thing to where you see a guy from the U.S. national team, they get vaulted up into the first round in every NHL draft cycle now, just like with players in Sweden, players in Europe. It's commonplace now. So I would think Thibodeau's going to the U.S. because 5 goals in 1 game, American-born player, that's going to be very hard to find, very hard to replicate. I doubt he goes to Barrie. I mean, he was drafted in the 6th round. You have to earn everything. If he goes to Team USA, he's probably going to be their first-line center, be that #1 guy. But the other football news, before we get into the WNBA mock, is about Nico Imaleva. Tennessee is officially moving on from him. I got that right as Joey called me. I got that as breaking news on Facebook and X right as Joey called me. So just wanted to share that before we dive into the WNBA mock, because that's a pretty big story. That's a pretty big story that Tennessee's moving on from Nico.
$4 million.
Yeah, Nico wants $4 million instead of $2 million, which is peanuts compared to what Bryce Underwood's getting at Michigan.
That's exactly what I said on
exactly,
on Facebook
Bryce
this morning.
Underwood only got $2 million
Underwood
initially,
got 3
but
times
then
that.
when Portnoy stepped in, he got like $11 million to go to Michigan.
Yeah. You know, Portnoy put freaking $5 million down or something.
I think there's only one goalie making more than that in the NHL, and that's the Rangers goalie, Ilya Sorokin, the Rangers goalie. He's making $12.5 million for 8 years. I think Ottinger, the Stars goalie, is only making like $8,750,000 or $8,250,000 for 8 years. So Underwood's getting overpaid massively, but at the same time, if he delivers, nobody's going to care. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I want to see where Imaliva, you know, who he signs with, because you know some people just
Nico Imaliva was my number 2 QB behind Quinn Ewers. I saw him make all six progressions against Chattanooga. Now, he didn't maintain that level of play as the season progressed, but early in the year, he showed that ability that you want in an NFL QB.
You know, I was watching Ewers do that last night. He was going through his progressions pretty good.
Yeah, Ewers, I've seen Ewers make 5 progressions out of 6. He's cleaned up a lot of his mechanics and stuff.
Floating footwork that was really throwing his accuracy off. He still throws some dangerous passes, but you know.
This is from ESPN. Tennessee is moving on from Nico Imaliva 25 minutes ago. 25 minutes ago. ESPN. This is from Pete Thamel. They had not stated who their
Derek Carr might be.
Yeah, and when I click the ESPN link, it redirects me to Derek Carr bullshit. And look, I'll get into the Derek Carr bullshit, but can we talk about Nico? I mean,
I want to see a Radler, man. Radler and Hainer.
I want to see Rattler and Hainer too. And Tony Mario is panicking. He's basically, because of the Derek Carr surgery, he wants to change his pick in his mock draft to Shedeur. I think Shedur's going to the Jets. Because right now the Jets' backup to Justin Fields is Tyrod Taylor.
That's my favorite.
I did hear something on that front.
Are you going to talk about Nico, or are you going to talk about
Aaron Jackson Dark? May be the one to go to the Saints. It's just something I heard this morning, but so it may not have much traction right now. But it's something to look at because of this Derek Carr injury.
Yeah, but the Nico Imaliva news is the far bigger story. I want to get some intel on that, but we don't know where he's going to end up. But it does sound like,
just to add the one little bit.
Nico Imaliva, Imaleava. Nico Imaliva.
Yeah.
Good boy.
All right.
Good game.
But
no, but the Saints did visit with Jalen Milroe as well.
So right now, Jake Merklinger, a redshirt freshman at Tennessee, is expected to be the starter for the Vols next year with Nico Imaliva leaving. Jake Merlinger, he was a freshman redshirt last year, and true freshman George McIntyre is the backup. He was a top 10 recruit in the class of 2026. He was a top 10 recruit. George McIntyre is a true freshman. Oh, and the top 10 recruit that Tennessee has is Faison Brandon. He will be a true freshman next year at Tennessee. So Faison Brandon probably will be the future QB at Tennessee, but they recruited him with the intention of being Nico's replacement after this year, assuming Nico declared for the draft. But I've heard 3 names for Nico Imaliva: Oregon, Ohio State, Colorado. Because if he goes to
Oregon's
got Dante Moore, and Colorado's got Kadon Salter, and Ohio State's got Ohio State's got Julian Sayin, the guy who redshirted last year under Will Howard. So
Yeah.
If he goes to any of those schools, the current incumbent quarterback's going to end up entering the portal and starting elsewhere. Do you see why NIL and the portal is a bad thing?
Yeah. It is for sure. They need to get some structure and
They need to make
get
these
control,
NIL
there's so
deals
much
like
tampering going on.
contracts where you sign a 2-year contract, you stay at the college for 2 years, and then you can transfer and enter the portal once your contract is up. Or you can renew your contract.
100%, man. 100%.
I love the NIL.
It's
I
not
absolutely
like
love the NIL.
Players deserve to get paid. I just don't like
I
the
do.
portal.
Yes, they do.
Not only that
They
doesn't
definitely.
concern me as much. It's the fact that when sports were at their best, overall, not just NFL or NBA or whatever, people were always staying in for years. They were developing. Remember, the male mind does not develop fully until they get to 25 years old. So, in that case, from a medical and psychological situation, these people coming out at 20, 21 years old, sometimes 18, 17 years old, they aren't even close to being developed. NIL gives them the incentive to stay in school, continue to develop both mentally and physically, and then going into professional sports, they will be more prepared and more mature. So you're not going to have these people like the Hall incident. I think it was Hall incident last year, where they got domestic disputes because of immaturity. We're not going to have that. We're not going to have people falling out windows because they're high on the second floor and wasting millions of dollars, because they'll be more mature than that. They will be older than that, mentally and physically. And that is incredibly important. And I think unless you've been checking the trends on professional athletes, that's something you miss.
And here's the other thing, Joey. Here's one more thing I'm going to add before I get into the WNBA mock. Because until the WNBA rookie salary goes up, we're going to see the biggest stars in women's basketball go back to college if they get the opportunity, especially if they're making $1 million or $2 million in NIL. Olivia Miles was supposed to be the number 2 pick. She went back because the rookie salary is only like $70,000 for the number 2 pick, $72,000 for the number 1 pick. But she chose to go back and then entered the portal, and now she's going to take over for Haley Van Lith at TCU, Olivia Miles. So she left Notre Dame. She's going to be on TCU this fall.
And that's good for women's basketball on a couple of levels. One, because people are going to stay to their seniors. 2, because these people are going to have money in a place where they're not going to have these incidents where they have to go to Russia, where they have to go to China, where they have to go to all these international companies or countries during the off season to make a living. No, they're going to be able to stay here because they're only going to have the money until their second contract, in which they'll make a couple $100,000. Then everything will even out because they're here practicing. They're in the facilities. They're with their teammates. They're not overseas. They're not doing all this other stuff. They're going to be right there. So not only are they going to be more experienced because they're all going to be juniors and seniors, but also they're not going to be overseas. They're not going to have this teammate and that teammate and have to learn, spend time learning this language and that language and how to communicate here and there and everything else. They're just going to be able to concentrate on basketball and their teammates here.
Yeah.
We can't underestimate how that singular focus will help them as players and as people.
And 2026, the next year's WNBA draft feels a lot more wide open than the last two, because this year and last year it's been Caitlin Clark in 24, Paige Buchers this year, and I'll get to the mock in a second. But right now, the top 3 for 2026, Lauren Betts, center UCLA, just took UCLA to the Final Four. Olivia Miles, point guard TCU, transferred from Notre Dame, would have been number 2 behind Buchers this year. And Flau J. Johnson, the LSU shooting guard, who chose to go back to college, even though she could have entered the draft as an underclassman. that's the top three next year. And I don't think there's a clear-cut number one player among that trio, Joey. I think there's three very good players, but there's not that standout who headlines the class like Clark and Buchers. But there's three very good candidates who all have an opportunity to show why they deserve to be number one next fall. So, and I think that's what you want when it comes to competition.
Yes, sir.
That's what you want.
Yes, sir. I agree 100%, man.
All right. On that note, I will dive into the WNBA mock. There's only 12 picks. Once this is done, we can talk about the group mock. We can talk about football. We can talk about whatever, and then whatever William wants to talk about until he has to go. Because I do.
You know me, I love
exactly. And we got the group mock. It's Passover. We've got the So I am going to screen share the WNBA mock, but there's only 12 picks. There's only 12 damn picks, and then we are and we'll be back on Monday. I'll be back. I don't know if Joey will be back. We did have fun covering the WNBA draft last year, but this class, it's good. It might be a little deeper, but the star power that was there at the top of last year's draft just isn't there this year. And with Olivia Miles returning, I would think this is going to make number 2 pick a lot more interesting. But yeah, number 1 pick. I've got Paige Buchers at number 1. I've had her at number 1 since my very first WNBA mock. But I mean, the Dallas Wings let both their starting small forward and starting power forward walk. They have Arik Ogwon-Bonale, who's a superstar shooting guard. So now you add Buchers, you're going to have 2 really good guards, and you got a good center. You don't have a power forward or small forward. You're probably going to have to get that in next year's draft. But Buchers is going to be the number 1 pick. I think that's very obvious. 19.9 points a game. Helped Connecticut win the championship. Seattle Storm had 5 scorers in their starting 5, average 10 points a game. But they traded Joelle Lloyd to the Las Vegas Aces to get the number 2 pick. And the Las Vegas Aces traded Kelsey Plum to the LA Sparks in a 3-team trade. So the LA Sparks sent the number 2 pick to the Seattle Storm. And what's interesting here is Lexi Brown takes over as the starting point guard for Joelle Lloyd. But you have Skylar Diggins-Smith back at shooting guard. You have Gabby Williams back at small forward. You have Nneka Ogwumike, former number 1 pick from 2012 at power forward. And Ezzie McBeggar actually averaged over 10 points a game and broke out despite the Storm losing Brianna Stewart. You have 4 good starters. I know there's a lot of people mocking international players or mocking the Notre Dame shooting guard to the Storm, but you should take Sellers here. You have a top 5 coach. You have 4 good starters. You just need a point guard to replace Joelle Lloyd. If you take Sellers, you might get to the WNBA Finals because outside of the Minnesota Lynx, there's not a team with a good starting 5 this year in the WNBA. And there's a few teams like the LA Sparks, the Chicago Sky, and the Storm who are 1 player away from making that championship run. And you got the number 2 pick. You're the Storm. And Joey's been on the Sellers bandwagon for 2 years now. He's even convinced that Sellers is going to be better in the WNBA than Buchers. So, I mean, with Olivia Miles returning to college, I think Sellers at 2 is the clear-cut, obvious choice. But there's a lot of WNBA mock drafts that have a different outcome, different player going second. And I just can't figure out why. I cannot figure out why all these mock drafts don't have Sellers at 2. This is a very open and shut decision.
Man, I need to find one of these chicks that's 6 foot, 6'2".
I mean, what do you think, Joey? I mean,
give me a football player, man.
Are we on the same page here that with Olivia Miles going back, and the Storm having 4 of their 5 starters back, only needing a point guard, Cheyenne Sellers is the obvious choice here at 2?
Well, Cheyenne Sellers would easily be number 2.
So Olivia Miles went back.
Last mock draft I saw or heard a couple months ago was like Sellers was like 5 or 6 or something like that. And I think we covered it on the podcast, and I said that was bullshit.
Yeah, I had her dropping to 6 because Olivia Miles was in the draft, but Olivia Miles is no longer in the draft. But the player they keep mocking to the Storm at 2 is Dominique Malonga from France. And Malonga's a good player. I've actually watched her, even though she's an international player. But I would not. You have a good center. You do not need Malonga. You need a point guard. You just traded your best player, Joelle Lloyd, and you don't. And your replacement for her is Max Christie, Lexi Brown. Lexi Brown's a good role player, but she's not a star. And you have a chance to get a star in Sellers and keep the rest of your starting 5 intact. You have a great coach. You have a chance to get this right. And I just don't agree with the decision. I've seen Anissa Morrow at number 2. I've seen Sonia Citron at 2. I've seen Dominique Malonga at 2. All good players. I've seen Kiki Irefin at 2. All these players are good players, Joey, but they don't really fill that major need for the Storm. They need a point guard, and Sellers is the best point guard with Olivia Miles no longer in this draft. This is very obvious. You had Sellers at 2 behind Buchers before Miles went back, but with Miles going back, it's just even more obvious now. So, I mean, I really don't know what else to say about that pick. The Mystics get Sonia Citron. They've got Brittany Sykes at point guard, 12.2 points per game. They've got last year's first-round pick, and they've got Shakira Austin back at center. But they need a shooting guard. Sonia Citron's the third best player. You could get Anissa Morrow at small forward. You could get Kiki Irefin. You could get Malonga. Any of those 4 players would be good. They'd be upgrades over your current starters. And you've got 3 of the top 6 picks. You've got 3, you've got 4, you got 6. You've got enough draft capital to trade up for Cheyenne Sellers if you want her that badly. Or if Seattle's dumb enough to pass on her, you could just grab her at 3. But I think Sonia Citron, probably the best fit for the Mystics. And then I've got Kiki Irefin going to the Mystics at 4. And then I put Malonga on Golden State Valkyries at 5. Malonga, international player, can play power forward at center. 18.5 points per game, 11 rebounds. Malonga is good. She plays on LDLC Asvel. It's the team in France that Tony Parker owns. It's where Wemby started out before his draft year. Anissa Morrow to the Mystics at 6. I do think those players, Morrow, Citron, Malonga, and Irefin, are all worthy of going in the top 5. The problem is I like Sellers better, and she fills a need for the Storm. So someone in that group of 4 between Citron, Irefin, Malonga, and Morrow is going to drop out of the top 5 and follow the Mystics at 6. That's really the dilemma I had when making this mock. And you can understand why. Because a lot's changed from November to now, Joey. A lot's changed from when I did the first WNBA mock back in December to this one. A lot has changed in the college basketball landscape with the WNBA draft 2 days away. I mean, these are good players, but they don't have the star power Buchers and Sellers have, in my opinion. But they are good players worthy of where they're being projected. I have Michaela Timpson of Florida State going 7th to the Connecticut Sun. 13.2 points per game. She's got a really 76% free throw percentage. She really didn't break out until her sophomore year. Connecticut Sun, they have everything except a power forward and a small forward, but they have the 7th and 8th pick, so they can get a Paula Timpson at 7, and then they can grab the best small forward on the board at 8, and that would be Asja Sivka, another international player. 11 points per game with the Tarbes Gespe Begore international basketball team. So Connecticut Sun, they get 2 players. LA Sparks, they're going to have Kelsey Plum at shooting guard, Rakea Jackson at small forward, Cameron Brink at power forward, and De'Erica Hamby at center. They do not have a point guard, though, but Georgia A. Moore, who I once had ranked above Cheyenne Sellers, drops to the Sparks at 9. And that is a steal. If Georgia Moore goes to the Sparks, they are going to be a playoff team. And I'm looking at the Sparks, I'm looking at the Storm, and I'm looking at the Chicago Sky as those potential challengers, the Minnesota Lynx next year. because the Chicago Sky, they got Courtney Vandersloot, the point guard from the New York Liberty WNBA champions. They got Ariel Adkins in free agency. They also got Kia Nurse and Rebecca Allen at shooting guard in free agency. And you've got Angel Reese at power forward. You've also got Camila Cardoso and Elizabeth Williams at center. So you have two good centers. You have Angel Reese at power forward. You didn't end up with Kelsey Mitchell, but you got two good quality point guards and two quality shooting guards. Two starters that can average 10 points a game. You got Vandersloot for depth at point guard as a sixth woman. And you also have Camila Cardoso for depth at center. So really, small forward's the low need for Sky, and Madison Scott from Ole Miss, 11.8 points per game, 5.1 rebounds, 3.7 assists. She can hit from short range or medium range. She defends well against the 1, 2, 3, and 4. So as long as she's not matched up against the center, matched up against a power forward, a small forward, a shooting guard, or a point guard, she can defend well. So, and her passing and three-point shooting's got to improve, but she has most traits. And, you know, if Madison Scott can end up developing, Chicago Sky will have that missing piece to make a run. And Minnesota Lynx, they've got Courtney Williams back, Kayla McBride's back, Elena Smith, Bridget Carlton, Nafisa Collier. All five of these players averaged over 10 points a game, and the Lynx actually made it to the WNBA Finals where they lost to the New York Liberty. I do have the Lynx over the Sky right now. That is my early prediction for 2025. And I have the Indiana Fever making the Eastern Conference Finals. So I have Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I have Reese winning because I think Chicago's lineup's a little stronger. Fever only have 3 double-digit scorers, and they don't have a first-round pick. The Sky have 4 double-digit scorers, and they have the 10th pick. But it's very close. And the WNBA doesn't go by conference. They go by top 8 seeds. So you could have 5 Western Conference teams and 3 Eastern Conference teams in the playoffs. They're all the top 8 best records. So, you know, that's the thing with the WNBA that's tricky. But right now, I would go with the Lynx over the Sky. I know Joey predicted the Sky in last year's WNBA Finals. I think Joey was a year early on that prediction. So, and remember, before the Fever took that last playoff spot, Angel Reese got injured down the stretch. Tihaina Papau of South Carolina goes to the Lynx at 11 as a depth player, and the Dallas Wings get Sonia Fegan at 12. And that's my first round. And I'll have live draft grades Monday night, 8 p.m. Thank you for keeping your composure and letting me through my WNBA mock draft, William and Joey. I think we did a good job covering all the picks, all the bases. And I'm gonna minimize this, and we can talk about football. We can talk about the group mock. We can talk about whatever, because if you're investing in my show, you should be able to talk about the topics you'd like to talk about. Plus, I've got to edit a 7-round mock draft for Tony Mario, and I just finished the 3rd round of my mock. I just finished the 3rd round of my NFL mock. So if you want me to pull it up, you want to go through some of the picks, we can do that as well. I'm going to leave this up to William.
Yeah,
because if William wants to talk about prospects or do whatever, I'll work on the mock. And if he wants to actually look at my mock or look at the group mock, we can do that as well. I'm giving William full control because he was patient with me, put up with my bullshit on the OHL draft and the WNBA draft and all the other drafts. And they got Craig Button from TSN on the OHL draft evaluating some of these prospects. Brian Lewis took Kamon Rucker. Damn it. I was going to take Kamon Rucker in the 5th round, get an edge rusher for the Patriots. Brian Lewis, you motherfucker. I'm saying that as a sign of flattery. You made the right pick. The fact that you got me to call you an MFer means you made the right pick. You took the right player.
Oh, man, getting Mario Hampton in the 3rd was a steal.
You took the right player, Brian. So Brian's taking Kamon Rucker. The Seahawks get Elijah Arroyo, and the 49ers are on the clock. So, yeah, that's where we're at in the group mock.
Oh, nice. What pick are we on?
So Scorton's going to be a right outside linebacker for the Ravens at edge rusher, and the Ravens are going to get Kamon Rucker as a left outside linebacker. They're going to get a second edge rusher. And, I mean, Ashton Gillott's still on the board. but I think he's more of a 43 guy than a 34 guy. But Ashton Gillott's a good player, and the Seahawks took Elijah Arroyo, the Miami Hurricanes tight end. So we are going to be on
That's
round 5
interesting.
very
He has
shortly.
a little bit of potential. So, yeah, Arroyo's got a little bit of potential. I mean, he has shown flashes, but he still has a ton of work.
All right.
To do. But yeah, man. I don't know. Pull up your mock and
All right.
let's see some of that. I think about the only other quarterback that I have to evaluate is Tyler Shugg. And, he's going to be right there. Just, on a rough grade, somewhere probably in the 3rd round. Kind of like Howard, he's going to come in and be, a top backup, like right off, with some potential. Shugg his feet are underrated, and dude can sling it. He just visited with the Giants as well. So, I mean.
All right, so Kamon Rucker goes to the Ravens. I'll pull up my mock in a second, but I have to update the big board. I have to update the big board in our group mock, and then CJ Cuevas is going to pick. But, yeah, Kamon Rucker's off the board, but here there's only a few 3rd-round players still on the board as we enter. You know what? I'll wait to do that. I'll wait till CJ announces his pick. I got a late first, mid-second on this kid. So CJ,
not so much.
Yeah, CJ's got the last pick in round 4, and once he makes it, but I'll pull up my mock. That's what William wants to discuss. So I'm going to pull up my NFL mock. What?
Yeah, CJ's Niners draft.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, CJ's drafting for the Niners. They've got the final pick in round 4. So I'll update the big board for our group mock once we get to round 5. But for now, I'm going to jump into the I only have 3 rounds of this done, by the way. And Tony Mario, I was about to start his mock, but the problem is Tony Mario wants to move Shedeur up from 21 to 9. So he might redo his mock. I might have to do round 4 of my mock before. I only have half of this done, by the way. I only have half of my NFL mock done, by the way, William. So you'll have to bear with me. But I am pulling it up to screen share with you guys right now. William requested this, and since I put him in charge of all the football content, since I like to code more than I like to podcast, but I do both because I love my audience. I mean, we had 180 people tune in for the OHL draft last night. So what does that say about how amazing our audience here is at the Utopia of Sports? But right now I've got Cam Ward of the Titans. I've got Cam Ward of the Titans at 1. I think this is pretty much a drop in the Swiss bucket, as Leonardo DiCaprio would say in The Wolf of Wall Street. Cam Ward went 70 for 90 at Miami's Pro Day. He would have a really tough division, though. But, Cam Ward, he'd have Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle, Slater at left guard, Cushenberry at center, Zeitler at right guard, and Latham at right tackle. And
I think you're missing the biggest part of Ward's game. It's not his accuracy, it's his ability. He has that Josh Allen type ability, that Patrick Mahomes type ability to throw from every angle with his arm. That's the big thing.
I'm not missing anything. If you read the scouting reports, I talk about his accuracy. I talk about his throwing power, his velocity. I talk about how he can make 1-step, 3-step, 5-step, 7-step drops. He's incredible at throwing on the run. I wouldn't compare him to Allen or Mahomes.
No.
I think he's a fringe.
I've got him.
There is a distinct process that he does where he can maneuver his arm around and still get velocity behind it.
Yeah.
That is something
that's for sure.
Basics in your report. But to say he can throw sidearm, he can throw underhand, he can throw overhand, he can go with his back to the body, run to the sideline, not even pay attention, but feel the receiver there and hit it. Those things that are very difficult, and they're things that you cannot keep because of Sixth Sense. Now, that's why I said a couple months ago, when everybody was saying this is a weak quarterback class and nobody would have gone in the top 5, I said Ward would have gone in the top 5.
I had Cam Ward.
Yeah.
I had Cam Ward on my radar very early in the process back in June, but I wanted to see him go through more than 4 progressions. I wanted to see him improve that. And by the time we watched him against Florida, he was making 5 out of 6 progressions. So he pretty much passed the eye test. I just wanted to see him pass the eye test before I penciled him in at 1.
I have evaluated.
His accuracy is not the strength of his game. It's everything else he does. And we also can't take away from the fact he played at schools, I think 3 different schools, 3 different systems. So he's also at depth.
I'm giving Joey a Final Jeopardy question. Can he name all 3 schools that Cam Ward played at?
I can. There's Incarnate Word. There's
Incarnate World,
and there's
Washington
Miami,
State,
Florida.
and Miami, Florida were the correct answers.
Yes, sir. Okay, so the one thing is
I knew you weren't going to get Incarnate World. That's why I asked the question. See?
I haven't evaluated Cam Ward.
When you roast me for stuff, I'm going to ask impossible questions. It's my way to retaliate. It's my way to get in your head. It's my and it's a creative way to get in your head. It's not a great thing to do, but it's
creative, but it really doesn't have the effect when I've got like 6 beers in me.
Anyway, so what I was saying was that I have evaluated Cam Ward over the last 3 years at all 3 of those schools. And, I've seen him play. He has added to his arsenal. He almost always has almost like a 3-quarter release, not as much as like Phillip Rivers, but he has added all those arm angles that you're talking about, Joey. And I mean, he has done well. I was excited to see him go to Miami this year and see what he could do. The only problem that I have with Cam Ward is the fire. I mean, the sense of urgency. I mean, there was, when he was playing for Washington State, they went up against Jay Kaner and Fresno State, and I mean, they just handled him. And Ward he just didn't have that sense of urgency. And I mean, Painter just took off and won that game. But I've got Ward, with a late 1st round grade, but I still have him, going number 1 to Tennessee, and but he has definitely added to his arsenal, and how he does that with the arm angles is his hip torque. He throws this twist into it, and I mean, it puts some damn velocity on the ball for sure, and it's almost like a whipping motion when he does it. I've watched a ton of his film, but like I said, I agree with you, Chris. He's definitely going number 1 if Tennessee sticks there. I mean, that's who they're taking. So
yeah. And I've got a floor grade of 85 out of 99. So I think Cam Ward's the one guy in this class who has the floor to be a starter right away as a rookie. But I also think his ceiling maxes out at like a 91. Like I don't see him being a 95 in 3 or 4 years. I think his ceiling, I think he's going to be maybe a Dak Prescott at best, or a guy who's a low end Pro Bowl QB. Maybe that's kind of what I see him at. A guy who can get you to the divisional round of the playoffs, but he's not going to get you to the AFC or NFC title game. But I think he can get you out of the first round with the right supporting cast. That's kind of what I see Cam Ward as.
Like I've mentioned so many times before, I haven't compared to, or being, maybe not compared, but being a Jalen Hurts kind of quarterback, and if he gets on a team with some good receivers, and that kind of stuff, likely going to have, good results.
Yeah, because Tony Mario also has Cam Ward of the Browns. No, Cam Ward of the Titans, not Cam Ward of the Browns. Sorry about that. Tony Mario and I do disagree on the number 2 pick. He believes it's going to be Hunter. I think it's going to be Carter. I think the body language is what because here's the thing with communication. I might be putting too much stock into body language, but 60% of communication is nonverbal. 30% is the tone. It's how you say it. It's the energy you convey. It's something Joey's been trying to tell me for years. And 7 to 10% of the communication is what you actually say. So if the Browns say they're going to draft a certain player, Andrew Berry says he likes a certain player, that's only 10% of the equation. You have to look at where the other 90% of that equation is. And the fact that the Browns GM crossed his shoulders at the pro day, was it just due to Baldinger? Did he actually like Hunter? Because he had his body and feet pointed at the football field, the gridiron, when Hunter was working out, but he also crossed his arms later in the day before Shadur worked out. So is Carter always been the guy, or did Baldinger get in Barry's personal space and that made him uncomfortable? That's what I'd like to know, but he's not going to tell us.
I would say this about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Baldy is a big dude, and if he gets in somebody's personal space,
I don't think Baldinger was trying to harm him. He was just trying to have a friendly conversation. I just think it was the wrong time, wrong place to do that.
Yeah, and that does kind of. I mean, if I was trying to evaluate people and somebody got in my personal space, I'd be like, dude, just back up, take 2 steps. Put on the song and give me 3 steps, honey, go. So that may have thrown off some of the body language. Because I don't think
the arm crossing is the only reason I don't have Hunter at 2. I want to see Abdul Carter work out before the draft since the injury's not severe, it's not season ending, and I want to see what body language cues Barry gives at that, because that's going to tell me whether they go Carter or Hunter at 2. I'm almost certain that's going to be Carter or Hunter.
For real.
I'm just not ready to pivot to Hunter yet. Most people have, but it also feels like a lot of people are panicking.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be
Hunter.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't take much of anything this time of year at face value because it's a bunch of BS.
Everything is BS because it's just
always
look at, though,
smoke
is
screens
the
and
collective brain trust at the owners' meetings. You have to look at that. That is one area where you can't BS anybody because there's such a brain trust. There's the owners. There's every executive. There's 90% of the media. The owners' meetings are the thing. I mean, that is the only thing you will gain anything from this time of year. And when that is, and that the big things that came out of that, one of them is a collective belief that Travis Hunter is going to be the pick. There were a couple other things that came out of it. There's something.
I'm open to changing the pick to Hunter, but I want to see Carter work out before the draft in front of the Giants, in front of the Browns, and that's going to give me a feel. That's going to be what ultimately decides whether I stick with Carter or pivot to Hunter.
I do think that Joe Flacco's signing does cement Hunter, but I am with you. I do want to see Carter work out.
So,
I want to see him,
because if we get the same body language from Barry that we got from Hunter, and there's no arm crossing, that might tip the scales back in Carter's favor leading up to the draft. We'll see. But I think it's down.
Baldinger's there trying to freaking.
I don't think Baldinger's going to be there.
It's like that's Baldinger's like you're trying to.
only the shadow knows.
A shadow come across Baldinger stepping over top of you. Like God, that'd be so unsettling.
Is it? It's still less. Is it still? It's. I don't know. I was going to say it was about as unsettling as having to work with Kevin on The Office, but Kevin on The Office is entertaining. I don't really feel like disrespecting the actor that played him because he's an entertaining comedian. So
I really love Baldy, but at the same time, you had trying to have a conversation.
There is
anybody who's ever gone into the draft. That is just you do not. It's like don't do that. That was just
and when and basically when Barry crossed his arms, I said that he looked like Malcolm X at Colorado's Pro Day. I don't know why I compared Barry to Malcolm X.
Speaking of Colorado's Pro Day and Travis
the hell is
Hunter,
wrong with me?
He only ran routes. He didn't backpedal at all. Travis Hunter at the Pro Day, he worked out as a wide receiver.
I know he did, William. I just think he's a better corner on tape. But the problem is the Browns are going to draft him as a wide receiver. I think he's a better corner. You think he's a better receiver. He's probably going to play both positions.
There is this, there is a world where he could possibly fall out of the top 5, depending on who likes quarterbacks, or who likes quarterbacks and such. But like I said before, the best place that I would love to see Hunter is with Drake May.
I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately, William. I would love to see Travis Hunter and Drake May in New England. I don't think it's going to happen. Bill Simmons once wanted those two to fall, and I think the Giants and Browns are both too smart to let either guy fall to the Patriots.
Right.
Wishful thinking. Appreciate a little bit, or say somebody's crazy. One of the big fantasies going on, I'll say it's a fantasy.
I've got Carter. I've got Carter at 2. We spent too much. We're going. I'm going to make my case. Can I make my case for Carter going to the Browns? Because this is my mock. I might be wrong, but the Browns have. We're screen sharing my mock. I'm not saying we can't make a case for Hunter, but we're screen sharing my mock. If you want to make a mock, put it on a website, and we'll share it. But the point is, William asked me to load my mock. We'll go over some of the picks, and I've got Carter to the Browns. I think he complements Garrett well. You'd have a very good edge rusher tandem. I don't trust. I know Shelby Harris has been reliable, but Malik Collins was a liability for the Niners last year. He's going to be the other starting defensive tackle. You're moving on from Dalvin Tomlinson. I think you need to get a defensive end. I think Carter just makes more sense. You can keep Emerson. You can keep Newsome. You can keep your core. Yeah, drafting Hunter does allow you to upgrade over Emerson at boundary corner, and it also allows you to upgrade over Tillman at receiver. And yes, he is the best player in the draft, but I just think Carter is fills a bigger need. It's at a more important position. And, corner's never gone in the top 2. A corner has never gone in the top 2, but, Hunter is an exception because he can play corner or receiver. But, 68 total tackles, 23 tackles for a loss, 12 sacks, 9 quarterback hurries. Carter is an elite pass rusher with deadly swim moves. You want to see him rip and block shit with more power, not be over-reliant on his athleticism. He's third on my big board, but I feel like he fills the biggest need for the Browns. And if Barry is looking at Carter if Barry passes on Hunter, it's going to be Carter. I'm just saying. And I've got Travis Hunter, the Giants, at 3. So regardless, I may end up flipping these picks. I've even told William and Joey before Joey went into his rant that I may end up flipping these picks. But I think Hunter, if he went to the Giants or the Giants, he'd be the number 1 corner. With the Browns, he's going to be the number 2 corner next to Ward, but he'll probably play receiver as well. And, could he win offensive and defensive rookie of the year with the Giants or the Browns? Theoretically, he could win both. It's unlikely he wins both, but if they play him as much as Coach Prime played him, it's theoretically possible for him to win both in the same year. That would piss off a lot of people. But I think it'd be kind of funny. I think it'd be kind of funny if somebody did win offensive and defensive rookie of the year in the same year. They won both awards. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Something, bro. I'd love it. That would be cool.
Yeah, but Hunter, I've got an 87 for floor out of 99, and I've got ceiling. I've got 97 to 99. So I think he's the safest prospect. I gave him an A+ in man zone, press, run stuffing, most complete player in the draft. I don't know if he can run all 30 routes in the route tree, but he did do a good job running routes at his pro day. What do you want to add? I'll put the Patriots pick on hold since I'm such a nice guy and I rudely interrupted your rant. I'll let you finish what you want to say before we get to New England.
Well, anyway,
It's Joey's turn,
yeah,
William.
no,
All
okay.
right. I don't know if we lost him. He's still here, but I think he's just contemplating his next actions.
Drawing up the next couple
because it's
of
like
bombs.
I want to mention I wanted to make my case for Carter at 2, and I thought it was a valid case because he fills a bigger need,
and
and you can keep most of your core guys, and if the body language cues are correct.
I was drinking. Sorry that drinking may offend people, but I was drinking.
But we're in agreement. It's going to be Carter and Hunter in the top 3 after Ward. Just I've got Carter at 2 right now because of the body language cues. But if Carter, works out with the Browns and the Giants, we'll see. If Carter only works out with the Giants, it'll probably be the Giants. And but I think those guys are locked into 2 and 3, regardless of how you spin it. Because Tony Mario does have Carter at 3 and Hunter at 2.
Thing, and I'm just going to dismiss it because obviously the time has passed to even suggest it. But what I will say is what I've been hearing, it's going to be Hunter and Carter, 2 and 3. Ward number 1. I don't understand Carter as much to the Giants because they've got the 2 pass rushers, but from what I understand, the Giants don't have much going for them, so they want to recreate what won them the Super Bowl, which was a massive pass rush. So, all I can say is, better luck to them. They get a great talent, but it's like, how are they going to use it?
Brian Burns' contract runs through 2029. And they cannot buy him out until 2027. And there were rumors that the Giants were going to trade Kayvon Thibodeau to the Titans for Harold Landry and the number 1 pick in a package. There were rumors. So if they get Carter, Thibodeau is probably the odd man out because Thibodeau had a very good rookie season, had double-digit sacks as a sophomore, but he had a down year in year 3. So Thibodeau would be the odd man out if they draft Carter.
He also takes some plays off. He does take some plays off.
I don't think the Giants should give up on Thibodeau, but if they draft Carter at 3, Kayvon Thibodeau is probably the odd man out. That's the reality, Joey.
In our mock, I couldn't pass on Hunter.
But here's what people don't talk about. Carter played the weak side linebacker for
his first 3 years. First few years, he was a weak side linebacker. And then he moved to edge in his draft year. But he was a weak side linebacker his first 2 seasons. He was a 43 right outside linebacker, which is the weak side, the will, as you stated.
Nice. I like that.
The weak side here, the will.
The Giants run a 34 defense, and the 34 defense has 2 edge rushers on the outside linebacker. That's the problem.
Yep.
So they can't.
Sure do.
Have talent, would you, say, force your scheme on the talent, or would you say, man, I've got all this talent, how am I going to make it work?
Honestly, they should move one of the guys to inside linebacker, because right now their inside linebackers are Bobby Okereke, and they also have the guy from Indiana, Micah McFadden. I like Micah McFadden, but if you have 3 edge rushers like Thibodeau, Burns, and Abdul Carter, move one of them to inside linebackers so you have that 3rd edge rusher.
I actually think Abdul Carter would, really do well on the inside, in the 34. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
That would actually be a hell of a thought.
Because I think the game's
when I was
changing, and
looking
if
over
you want to run a 34 defense, you're going to have 3 edge. You're going to have 3 pass rushers, 3 edges, even if it means having one on the inside linebacker. Because Thibodeau,
the
Carter,
Giants have
and
no depth.
Burns are too talented to bench. All 3 of those guys are too talented to bench. So either Thibodeau gets moved, or they end up having to move Carter or Thibodeau or Burns to the inside. That's the only way they can make that work. Because I think we're in agreement there, but I mocked Hunter at 3. But regardless, that's the top. Can we get to my Patriots at 4, or should we bring this down a little bit longer?
Let me say one thing. The Giants, I mean, they just have to take the best player available, because when I looked at their depth chart, they don't have depth anywhere. And I mean,
they should pick best player available.
They would have the best.
Draft. I mean,
they would have 3 good. They would have depth at pass rusher if they took Abdul Carter. You're right. And if they take Travis Hunter, they'd have a number 1 corner and a number 2 receiver.
And you can never have enough pass rushers. That's a fact,
true.
Man. But yeah, moving him to middle linebacker.
I know it was a crazy idea, Joey, but I thought of that because the only way you can start Carter, Thibodeau, and Burns is if you move one of them to inside linebacker, because they're all 250 pounds.
And you know why it's not a crazy idea? Because we have 14 days till my vacation starts. That means we have 14 days until the draft. That means
actually we have 12 days. The draft is April 24th. On Thursday, so we have 12 days for the draft. But
you have 12 days to my vacation? Shit, I work too much. But the point holds. The point holds. This is the time to get crazy ideas. This is the time where things are going to start coming into fruition. When it comes to what we know, what we believe, and how we do, there are going to be some questions, for probably up until a few days.
Okay.
The first 5 or 6 picks.
All right.
This year, up till the first 9 picks. So, speculating on Carter being a middle linebacker and whether he can transition.
Because the problem, it's a good problem to have, but the problem is Thibodeau, Burns, and Abdul Carter are all too talented to be on the bench. So the only way you can play all 3 of them is if you move one of them to inside, because none of them are 260, none of them are 290, none of them are big enough to move to 5 technique or nose tackle. So the only way you can play all 3 is if you move one inside next to Bobby Okereke.
The one thing that I might do,
Carter. The other guys are pure edge rushers. Carter has experience calling plays as a linebacker.
The one thing that I see with Carter and talking about him playing middle linebacker is what I would do with Drew Sanders from Denver. Is, he's a 3-down linebacker, just not in the traditional sense. Line him up at middle linebacker the first 2 downs, and then on 3rd down, let him rush from wherever.
Really, the Giants only have 2 choices.
Be one hell of a thing to do with
I've got
Carter.
Hunter going to the Giants at 3, and in my scenario, if Hunter goes to the Giants at 3 and Carter goes to the Browns at 2, Hunter's the number 1 corner. Paulson Adebo's the number 2 corner. And Deontay Banks, your 2023 first-round pick's your nickel. Hunter's also your number 2 receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson and Slayton Slayton moves to slot. Wandale's your number 4. Hyatt and Pascal and little Jordan Humphrey are competing for that number 5 job in my scenario. But I do think whichever player the Browns pass on is going to be a Giant. And if the Giants take Carter, then you got 2 choices. You can either move Carter to inside linebacker and have 3 edge rushers in your linebacking core, or you're going to have to bench Thibodeau, and he's going to be the odd man out. But we'll see what happens with the Giants. But I think New England at 4, this is a pick Tony and I agreed on. Will Campbell, left tackle LSU. Bantle has Will Campbell to the Patriots as well.
Alligator arms.
Will Campbell was born on January 6th. I hope I did not traumatize any people by bringing up a traumatic day in U.S. history. Anyway, back to why the Patriots are going to draft Will Campbell. He squatted 6'15" entering this year. He squatted 500 as a sophomore and 350 as a freshman. And Will Campbell is the biggest reason Jane Daniels became the second pick outside of Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. So Drake May would have Will Campbell at left tackle, Cole Strange at left guard, Garrett Bradbury at center, Onwenu at right guard, and Morgan Moses at right tackle. You'd also have Diggs as a flanker. You'd have Bout as a secondary receiver, Demario Douglas as a slot. You'd have Javon Baker as a number 4, Kendrick Bourne as a number 5, Mac Hollins as a number 6. So Lynn Polk is currently the number 7 receiver on the depth chart on Our Lads. And Polk went 37th overall in the second round last year with Hunter Henry at tight end. Austin Hooper comes back as the number 2 tight end. Jaheim Bell, last year's 7th-round pick, your 3rd-string tight end. Stevenson and Gibson are the running backs. I gave Will Campbell a floor of 87 out of 99, ceiling of 96 out of 99. Abdul Carter for ceiling, I have 91. So I have Will Campbell at 2 on my board. I have Abdul Carter at 3, and I have Travis Hunter at 1.
That is also a pick that I would love for the Patriots is Will Campbell because they need to.
Yeah, and Earth signs just click with each other. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, Tree and Grassi, Orrin and myself, Earth sign, or Donovan James and myself, Rudy Reyes and myself. Earth signs just click with each other. So if we don't take Will Campbell, we can take Josh Simmons, who's also an Earth sign. We can take Connerly, or we can take Kelvin Banks. We just cannot take. We cannot take Armand Membu. I just don't think he's going to have good chemistry, and I think Membu's more of a right tackle than a left tackle.
I've seen him way high in mocks. I've seen him at
and people are comparing him to freaking Trent Williams.
Dude.
No, he's not even close to Silverback
insane,
Williams.
Dude.
I'm sorry. It's like,
yeah,
you get it. He gave up 0 sacks. He had a great combine, but he played right tackle in high school for 4 years. He played right tackle at Missouri for 4 years. It is what it is.
Was it him or was it the other Imbo that was getting pushed around at the Senior Bowl?
Will Campbell wasn't at the Senior Bowl. He was at the Combine and the Pro Day.
No, it wasn't Will Campbell. I'm talking about
Membow and freaking Embo or whatever that guy's name is. One of them was getting pushed around.
Might have been Membo.
Yeah, I think it was actually. So
Membu wouldn't be a bad pick at 38. You could have him as a backup to Morgan Moses.
No.
And you can mold him to be your right tackle. But at 4, it's an absolute Patriots an F grade if they take Membu at 4. I'm gonna be more vulgar than John Taffer on Bar Rescue if Armand Membu is the Patriots' 1st-round pick. That's the only warning Rob Kraft is getting. Man. I'm gonna be more vulgar than John Taffer on Bar Rescue.
He was on the Niners top 30 list too, man. I was like, no. But I'll tell you what right now with my Niners is the fact that 4 of their picks, there is going to be defensive lineman, who's ever the best available. There's going to be an offensive lineman, whoever is the best available. There's going to be a running back, and there's going to be a tight end.
But, Tony Mario and I have the same top 4. Number 5 is really where the drama begins. I have Will Johnson at 5, Michigan corner, because the Jaguars have 2 good defensive tackles in Hamilton Armstead, but they don't have a great defensive tackle. You can't buy out Armstead till 2026. And while cutting Hamilton post-June 1st saves $4.3 million, Hamilton's still in his 20s. If you have to pick between cutting Hamilton or Armstead, you'd rather cut Armstead because he's older. But if you can find a trade partner for Hamilton before the draft, I would have 0 issue with Mason Graham if he's there at 5, and you can actually find a trade partner for him. But unless that happens, I got to give the Jags a corner because they lost their number 2 corner, Ronald Darby, and I just feel like Will Johnson's ceiling might be higher than Tyson Campbell's, even though Will Johnson would start out as the number 2 corner to Campbell. And I know Will Campbell only played 6 games, and the reason people have Graham ahead of him is because Mason Graham did not get injured. Will Johnson only played 6 games in his draft year, even though he's very good as a sophomore when Michigan won the national title. But for me, I think Will Johnson's 4th on my board. Mason Graham is 5th. Will Johnson fills a bigger need. That's why the pick is Will Johnson in my mock. Tony Mario does not have Mason Graham at 5. He He has the Jaguars going with a wide receiver, Tatrora McMillan. He has McMillan. Tony Mario's thought process is a new regime, new head coach, offensive-minded coach, and the Jags don't have a legitimate number 2 next to Brian Thomas. They have Gabriel Davis and they have Diami Brown, but he thinks both of them are slot receivers. And he thinks if you draft McMillan and you pair him with Thomas and McMillan pans out, then you can have Parker Washington on your bench, and then you have Diami Brown and Gabe Davis competing for that slot job. That's Tony's thought process with the GM and the new regime and offensive-minded head coach and Liam Cohen taking McMillan at 5.
McMillan at Arizona, he when Jed Fish went to Washington, Noah Fafita took a step back. And, McMillan was always rated pretty high at the beginning of the draft cycle. But this is the highest
I've seen him at 4 at one point.
It seems like
that was
he's 10 and
before
below.
People realized the Patriots are going to take Will Campbell. But I've seen McMillan at 4.
Yeah.
But that was just pre-early draft process.
Yeah.
But Tony Mario has McMillan and the Jags at 5. Okay? We've seen crazier things happen. Remember, Tony Mario correctly mocked Patrick Surtain to Denver. Nobody else had Patrick Surtain to Denver in 2021. So, just throwing that out there. And I do think McMillan fills more of a need than Mason Graham. I don't agree with the pick, but I don't hate it either. And I understand the thought process. But
he's got one hell of a catch radius, and I think he
ran a
like
4.38 at Arizona's pro day.
40?
Yeah.
Oh, did he? Oh, wow.
And that 40 time is another
combine,
reason why Tony put McMillan in the top 5 of his mock.
I can see that now. A 6'5" receiver. Yeah, that's actually.
The last time the Jaguars took a receiver at 5, it was Justin Blackmon back in 2012.
And then there was Matt Jones at number 11 or something like that. I tried to convert that quarterback.
Joey could give a TED talk on Justin Blackmon, but it would be way too traumatic and disastrous for Jaguars fans to endure. Let's be real.
Too much drinking. Anyway, but man.
Tony Mario's got Will Johnson at 6. I've got Mason Graham at 6. Because I think the Raiders are in a good spot with Spytech, though. Because Will Johnson's 4th on my big board. Mason Graham is 5th. Ashton Ginty is 6th. The Raiders are picking at 6. As long as Spytech picks one of those 3 players, the Raiders are getting an A+ grade here. And if the Raiders take Ginty, they'll piss off Warren and get an A+ grade in the process. Which is a double whammy because it gives Joey the opportunity to roast Oren.
Yeah, for sure.
Dang it. Hold on. I zoomed in on my mock draft, so I have to reload it. Sorry. The freaking thing zoomed in. My mock draft, it zoomed in. It's out of control. My mock draft is out of control. My mock draft has decided to go on a
it looks fine from my side.
I've got a let's share this tab.
Normal.
Let's share this tab and let's reload all right, I'll go back to Restream here in a second, but it's being a pain in the butt loading. But Tony Mario's got Will Johnson at 6. I've got Tony Mario does have Mason Graham at 7, but I got an email from Tony Mario because Tony Mario he has an insider at Pewter Report that used to intern for Charlie Campbell before he went to Walter Football. And one thing we're hearing from Tony's insiders is the Jets have narrowed it down to Tyler Warren and Armand Membu. I think that is bullshit. I mocked Shedeur to 7, and I mocked Membu to the Jets at 43.
Yeah.
So I have Shedeur and Membu both going to the Jets. And Jets fans are going to love that, but I think Membu's going to be a bust. Just a hunch.
Yeah. Like I said, he was.
But I have Shedeur to the Jets at 7.
It wasn't pretty.
The reason why
I like
the Jets, there's only 4 teams that Shedeur can end up on. The Jets, because their scouts gave him positive body language at Colorado's pro day. The Saints with the Derek Carr injury. The Steelers, who An AFC North scout said Shedeur Sanders is better than Joe Burrow. That keeps both the Browns and Steelers in the Shedeur Sanders conversation. I think it's unlikely the Browns draft Shedeur, but I'm putting both teams in the conversation because the Steelers haven't done shit at QB, and I can see the Browns moving up for Sanders if the value's there and they don't have to give up a first. So I think the Browns are a long shot at this point for Sanders, but I'm not ruling out the possibility. But,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Those are the only 4 teams that I believe are in the running for Shedeur Sanders. So
I think you're exactly right. I do think Shedeur will be a star, but I'm also realistic to the situation.
because I gave Shedeur a ceiling grade of 93 out of 99, which is higher than the potential grade I gave Cam Ward. But I gave him a floor grade of 73, which 73 is like, I think Caleb Williams had a 74. Caleb Williams had like a 76 on Madden. Drake May had a 75. So Sanders would have a 73 to start. But I do think, with Shedeur Sanders, I've got Shedeur Sanders to the Jets. Tony Mario does not believe they will take him here.
I'm going to play Grinch here with Shedeur.
I think it'll be the Jets, and I'm basing that on the body language. I could be wrong. It could be the Saints. I'm going to go with the Jets because the Jets' current backup is Tyrod Taylor, and they've Jordan Travis at third string. And
there were teams last year that had Radler rated in the first round, supposedly.
But then he fell to around 5. But like with Shedeur, I think Shedeur goes to the Jets because right now, because when I watched the quarterbacks in July of 2023, there were 3 guys that checked every box: Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, Shedeur Sanders. And then Shedeur went back. Drake May checked off that final box when rewatching his Appalachian State tape in 22. But Shedeur Sanders will probably be the backup. I'm higher on third-string quarterback Jordan Travis than backup Tyrod Taylor, but let's be real. If the Jets draft Sanders, then Taylor and Travis are essentially competing for the third-string job, and the loser gets cut. That's essentially the reality. And the Jets are in a favorable position where they don't have to rush Sanders in because Justin Fields, if you cut Justin Fields, you're only saving $1 million in cap space. The Jets can basically redshirt Sanders.
Fields can be a good quarterback.
Play Fields until they're out of contention this year, and then start Shedeur Sanders and keep Fields on as the backup if Shedeur struggles. That's basically the position the Jets are in, and that's a position where you can take Shedeur Sanders if that's the quarterback you want. You can make that luxury pick, Will, and that's why I went with Shedeur to the Jets, because you have Fashanu at left tackle, Simpson's back at left guard, Tippmann's back at center, Vera Tucker's back at right guard. Right now, Carter Warren, the 2023 fourth-round pick out of Pittsburgh, is your starting right tackle. You have Garrett Wilson, you have Lazard on a pay cut, you have Josh Reynolds in the slot receiver, and Malachi Corley's your number 4. Tyler Johnson is competing with Corley for that number 4 job, the former Minnesota receiver, Tyler Johnson.
Corley's a good receiver.
Yeah, I mean, so there's
Corley is a good receiver, and like I said, I love Jordan Travis, but that injury he had was bad because they had him on the physically.
Yeah, and they're saying he may have re-aggravated something. I think it's BS, but like if that's the case, they're probably going to cut the loser of Tyrod Taylor versus Jordan Travis if they take Shedeur Sanders.
Free Travis.
I like Jordan Travis. I do. I think Jordan Travis has a higher ceiling than Tyrod. The problem is Tyrod's ahead of him on the depth chart, and there's a lot of people saying the Jets rushed Jordan Travis back from his injury after they got eliminated. That was one thing the media leaked, is that the Jets rushed him back. Oh. And here's the thing. As crazy as it sounds, Joey, I can actually see Shedeur succeeding with the Jets because Aaron Glenn, if he sets the tone from day one that Shedeur starts rookie minicamp as a 4th-string QB behind Travis, behind Tyrod Taylor, and Shedeur has to earn everything, Shedeur's going to thrive in that environment. And if not, he's going to falter. That's really what this comes down to. if the Jets draft Shedeur Sanders at 7 is what does Aaron Glenn do to prepare him for the NFL? I know Aaron Glenn's a defensive-minded guy, and he's brought in some coordinators, but he's got to set that tone and say, Shedeur, you're going to earn everything you get.
They have to get a proper quarterback coach for Shedeur.
Irritates me to no end is that people say, let's just take the Jets for a round number. It's like, we like Shedeur, but we like this player better, so we're going to let Shedeur try. And then we're going to move back up again.
Well, one of the Jets scouts gave one of the Jets.
Jets were just an example. It has no standing, but it was just the idea of the thought that we love him, but we don't love him more than this guy. So we're going to take this guy. He's a quarterback. If you love him and you think he can turn around your franchise, you take him. If you don't, you don't.
But the weird thing is, I only saw 3 scouts give Shedeur positive body language at Colorado's Pro Day. The Jets, the Broncos, and the Eagles. The Broncos have Bo Nix on a rookie deal. The Eagles have the Super Bowl MVP. Broncos and Eagles are not taking Shedeur. That leaves the Jets by process of elimination. So that's why I mock Shedeur to the Jets. And it's a good thought process. It's not a great thought process, but it's a valid one.
Like I said,
the best player on my board is Ashton Ginty, and the Jets have 3 running backs, all on rookie deals. It makes no sense for the Jets to take Ginty, so let's plug in QB2 here. That was kind of the conclusion I came to.
It's just the thought process of really like him. We really think he can turn our team around, but we like this person more, so we're going to take him and then try to trade back up. And it's like, no. If you think this guy is the guy and he can turn your franchise around, you take him at through 7, 9, 21, or wherever. You don't try to play a game of rush.
And look, Justin Fields was good in Chicago, but he wasn't great in Chicago. And if he was great in Pittsburgh, he would have kept the job all year. And I do think Fields deserves a 3rd opportunity as a starter, but it's going to be his last opportunity as a starter, and it's a 2-year contract, and you can buy him out after his rookie year, but you only save $1 million cap space. That tells me Fields is going to be on the Jets for 2 years. Maybe he's the bridge QB this year, and then next year, if Shedeur supplants him, he's the backup.
The Jets have drafted like 1 offensive lineman, in the 4th round?
No, they got Fashanu at 10. They traded down to the Vikings. They took Fashanu out of Penn State. He did very well against Miami
but
in the
few
finale.
Years before, but the few years
they
before,
took Joe Tippmann in the 3rd round of the 22 draft
on the
out of
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. They took Vera Tucker in the 1st round of the 21 draft, and they got John Simpson, the former Raiders left guard in free agency, and they got Carter Ward in the 4th round out of Pittsburgh at right tackle. Tony Mario is telling me it's going to be either Tyler Warren or Membu. But I think it's going to be Tyler Warren, Membu, or Shedeur. I think Tyler Warren and Membu are the contingency plans if Shedeur's not there at 7. If Shedeur's there at 7, I think
I was about to say this is your Membau pick. This is your
it's a very deep tight end draft. I hope the Jets draft Membu because I think he's going to be awful. But
speaking of which, to our audience, this next year I'm starting March 1st or May 1st. Putting a spotlight on tight ends for writing my evaluations because there's not very many people that talk about them. So I would just like to announce that. And like I said, I'm definitely going to miss this year because of how deep the tight end class was, and literally having 3 or 4, 1st round worthy or 1st round graded tight ends this year. I mean, but like I said, man, it's going to be good next year. Like I said, it's going to be a spotlight on tight ends and quarterbacks, and I'm just going to put it together.
We got some people in the chat room here. Hold on a second, William. I've got some. The chat room's blue. I'm just loading up the chat room here, seeing if anybody commented on the mock draft. Best viewers on Streamboo. I thought I was going to get an intelligent mock draft question again. More trolling. I like YouTube. I like Facebook. I like X. I really do not care about Kick and Twitch. I just have them on because you have to have 5 streaming platforms. You get up to 5 on Restream. So those are the side. Those are the side streams. Those are the side streams. They're not the main ones. They're the side streams. They're the side streaming services.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've got 3 on what do you call it? Radio FM.
Yeah,
or
and all the episodes
FM,
that are on TalkShoe go to
is,
Apple and iTunes, and all the episodes on TalkShoe also go to iHeartRadio. So there's millions of ways to listen to Draft Utopia.
Oh, I just hit the podcast button on my iPhone here, and
we are all over the place.
I mean,
you're right.
Search us,
but yeah,
you can definitely find us, man.
Absolutely.
Google our names, check out our
Panthers.
stuff.
I'm going Mikal Williams. The Panthers have gone with a player in the Southeast region every year dating back to 2020. Derek Brown, Auburn, J.C. Horn, South Carolina. 22. They took 22. They took Ike Emekwanu, North Carolina State. Bryce Young, Alabama, and last year they traded up for Xavier Legette. So.
Oh.
ACC or SEC, Southeast region. I would have mocked Luther Burden here at 8. He is the best player on my board, but the problem is the Panthers go for players in the Southeast region. Luther Burden plays in the Midwest. I know he plays in the SEC, but Missouri's in the Midwest. A Midwest college that plays SEC programs. It's a former Big 12 school. Yeah, I have Mikal Williams. The Panthers have a bigger needed pass rusher than receiver anyway.
The one thing with the Panthers is David Tepper meddling with the GM, and that is who is it? Is it still Scott Fitterer, or did they hire someone else? But no,
Dan Morgan's the GM.
Oh, and there we go, Dan Morgan.
Keekley's the director of college scouting now. Luke Kuechly's working directly under Dan Morgan. Man.
Those are two of
if
my
the Panthers turn things around,
ever.
You got to give all the credit to Dan Morgan and maybe Luke Kuechly if he's on the Panthers.
Tepper just needs to step aside and let Morgan and Kuechly do their thing, man, because those two are two very, very intelligent linebackers that know ball. Like, I mean,
when Scarface and Sosa take out Frank to take over the Mafia in Scarface, they end up making the business worse. But if Morgan and Kuechly did that to Tepper, hypothetically speaking, they would make the Panthers a better franchise. But do not do anything to harm your boss. Respect your boss. Respect your leader.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm using Dave Tepper and leader in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Maybe I do need to drink more beer.
That guy is, for real, man. But like I said, he just needs to keep his damn nose out of it and let those guys do their work. Because Kuechly is amazing. I mean, it's just that simple. And Morgan, I mean, he had the Super Bowl record with 25 tackles in 2003.
Yep.
Ended because of concussions. That's the same thing, Kuechly ended because of, both shortened careers but two great linebackers.
Yeah, right now, San Diego FC is second in the Western Conference as an expansion team. If an expansion team played Dave Tepper in the MLS Cup, would you root for Dave Tepper or the expansion team? I'm pretty certain you'd root for the expansion team because it's not Dave Tepper. Yeah, that would be your response in that situation, Joey. You'd root for the expansion team because it's not Dave Tepper. Pretty
just
much.
Because, man. Just because. Who's up next, man?
I got Mikal Williams, the Panthers, though. 6.5 tackles for a loss, 5 QB hurries, 4.5 sacks. As a freshman, he had 15 solo tackles, 8.5 tackles for a loss. I have Mikal Williams at 10 on my board, but he did well against Kelvin Banks, who's my number 2 left tackle. Number 9, Luther Burden. I had Luther Burden to the Saints back in August. I still have Luther Burden to the Saints at number 9 this time around. I know a lot of people are going to give me shit for that, but I mean, he's a great route runner, and Olav's already had multiple concussions, and Burden would be a number 2 receiver next to Olav right out of the gate. That's just my honest opinion. And if Carr's injured, you can just play Hainer and Rattler. If both suck, you can get your QB in 2026.
That just gives me an idea, man. Burden is literally my friend.
Because if you draft Shadur or Dart at 9 and your only weapon's Olav, and Olav gets another concussion, Jackson Dart's going to make Heath Schuler look like Abraham Lincoln. As a politician, he's going to make Heath Schuler look like Peyton Manning as a quarterback. That's how bad of a fit Jackson Dart to New Orleans is.
Yes. That's not going to happen because they have Rattler and Hainer. Like I mentioned before, those are both
get another weapon for those QBs. Because really, I don't think Hainer and Rattler were overtly terrible. I think the reason they struggled offensively is because Olav had concussions and they really just didn't have another weapon step up.
Exactly, and that's why they ended up going 0-7 between them. But like I said, they were my
A.T. Perry got cut. He's on the Broncos, but yeah, they need another weapon next to Olav.
Perry is a good receiver too. I'm not sure what happened there.
They cut him, and the Broncos picked him up as a practice squad guy.
Yeah, I think I heard that one time. No, but yeah, no, freaking Rattler and Hainer can play some ball, and I definitely want to see that. The Saints also visited with Jalen Milroe, and
I have not mocked a QB to the Saints in my mock, so sorry, Saints fans, you'll have to wait. Bears get Ashton Ginty, the running back out of Boise State. Him and Caleb have a lot more. Him and Caleb Williams. The Bears seem to love Ginty. So Ginty's a Bear. Ginty was 6th on my board, and I know Swift is good, but he can't stay healthy, and I think Ginty has a higher ceiling than him, and he's more of a upgrade, and you can ease Ginty in. You can have what the Lions have with Gibbs and Montgomery if you draft Ginty. Swift's your Montgomery, Ginty's your Gibbs, and you can ease Ginty in, and Ben Johnson can keep that 2 running back system he deployed in Detroit under Dan Campbell, bring it to Chicago, take some pressure off of Caleb's Williams, because
for sure
they made a lot of upgrades in the offensive line. They got Jonah Jackson, the Rams offensive lineman, as a right guard. They got Thuney from the Chiefs at left guard, and they got Drew Dahlman, the Falcons center, in free agency. So the Bears have made a lot of upgrades offensively. DJ Moore's their flanker receiver still. Rome Odunze, who was the slot last year, is now the secondary receiver. Cole Met still your number 1 tight end. You also added some additions and defensively. I'll get to that when we get to round 2. But
Cole has definitely turned into a great safety valve for a young quarterback.
Well, I remember Notre Dame's safety Jalen Elliott at the Senior Bowl. I asked him about Cole Met. He said Cole Met's a special tight end. I did not know who Chase Claypool was at the time I interviewed Jalen Elliott. I did not know who Chase Claypool was. But even though Claypool had a good rookie year, Met ended up having the better NFL career between those two. So I got that one right by not.
And Ginty just makes too much sense there because, that's the one skill position, that can really take some pressure off of Caleb Williams.
And it's a player Caleb Williams likes, and it's a player that fits Ben Johnson's 2 running back system. So logistically, that makes too much sense. Also, Ginty's 6th on my big board. He's the best player available at 10.
The best thing to happen with Caleb Williams is if they put a leash on him and, make him do, the short discipline, kind of football, and not that hero show off stuff that he does.
Caleb Williams is not a dog that needs a dog collar with spikes on it. You think Caleb Williams is a dog that needs a dog collar with spikes on it?
I think he needs to be held back a little bit, and developed properly.
Very interesting. Quick update from the OHL draft. Rocco Pelosi, a player that's supposed to go to the U.S. national team development program, just got picked by the Oshawa Generals at the end of round 10. Rocco Pelosi is currently projected to go 3rd overall in the 2027 NHL draft, but I think Pelosi's going to go to the U.S. national team, and I think Cannon's probably going to play with him. Cannon Thibodeau. It's going to be Rocco Pelosi and Cannon Thibodeau on the U.S. national team, and they're probably both going to go in the 1st round. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint what players step up for Team USA in hockey, but I would imagine Rocco Pelosi, because Rocco Pelosi broke Crosby's records in Bantam hockey, Sidney Crosby's records. He had like 180, 120 points. I think Crosby had like 120 and 150 in Bantam before he joined the Rimouski Oceanic. And they said he wasn't old enough to play, which led to the exceptional status rule. Yeah, I misspelled the in Ashton Ginty. But yeah, 49ers, I gave them James Pierce. Let's talk about your Niners, William. I almost went with McMillan here, but then I realized, you know what? The Niners, they have Jennings in the slot. They have Pierce as their number 2. They have some good depth players. Doesn't make a lot of sense to mock a receiver here. We can't have Yetter Gross-Matos starting next to Nick Bosa. That's not going to make the 49ers defense great again. So we got to go James Pierce Jr. He's the best fit. He was 13th on my board. And with Bosa and Nick Pierce Jr., you have 2 edge rushers that are going to be hard to game plan against.
What I think with the 49ers is, like I said earlier, at number 11, they are going to pick the best player available at either offensive line or defensive line. And then, like I said,
Carson Swessinger, I'm not high on Carson Swessinger, but I mean, Carson Swessinger got picked by the Niners in the group mock. So we're on round 5 of that. I just wanted to get a quick update on that.
You know, he is a little light, but, you know, Robert Mathis was 250 pounds soaking wet. You know, when Dwight Freeney came in, he was like 255. He put on, you know, like I think he went to 265, you know, and they were playing 4-3 defenses. So it would be interesting to see him across from Bosa. And I think their greatest need is defensive line. You know, whoever is the best defensive tackle and you know, at number 11 will likely be the pick. But if they have like I said, an offensive tackle or someone rated a little bit higher, that they'll pick them, you know, and they definitely have the shot. You know, people were knocking on Purdy last year, and it's like, dude, he didn't have any receivers, and you know, Jennings is starting to develop, and he is one tough SOB, man. I mean, I watched that dude. He took the Arizona Cardinal cornerback all the way through the end zone and into the stands. That was something, man. I mean, dude can play some ball. I mean, he needs to clean up his routes and such, but you know, Brock Purdy over his first 30 games, you know, averaged something like 31 points a game, which was higher than anyone ever. Mahomes was at like 28, and I think Brady was at like 24 or something like that over their first 30. And, you know, people knock on Purdy all day, but it's just they're mad because
the Niners
they were
just
wrong
have
about
so
him.
many needs. That's the problem. It's not that McMillan's the best player on my board, but I can't go best player over need because the Niners have 6 quality receivers. I'll pull up the Niners depth chart quickly. And they just drafted Pearsall in the first round last year. That's the other part of it. And their slot receiver is Jawan Jennings. And Jawan Jennings, even though I think Jennings is a backup, he stepped up in a big way when both Ayuk and Debo were injured last year. So if he wants to remain the slot receiver, I don't really see a problem with that. And your backups to those 3 are DeMarcus Robinson and Jacob Cowing. Robinson's your number 4, and Jacob Cowing's your number 5. So do you really want to spend the 11th pick on a number 6 receiver or number 5 receiver? No. That's foolish.
Cowing can take the top off of defense, but he's also really light in the ass end. You know?
Agreed. But the Niners have so many needs, William. They need a center. They need a left guard if you keep Mooney at right guard. They need a right tackle. They need multiple defensive tackles. They need an edge next to Bosa.
And that's why
there's so many needs that you got to fix in one draft. There's too many.
You know, to add to my list: offensive line, defensive line, tight end, a linebacker, and probably a safety. I mean, is who they're going to draft. I would almost guarantee that they draft those 5 positions.
Yeah,
right there, just in whatever order.
I went with McMillan I went with McMillan to Dallas, and I'll read the rest of Tony Mario's mock. He's got Mason Graham to the Jets, but he's going to change that to Warner Membu. Mikael Williams to the Panthers. He's got James Pierce to the Saints, Ginty to the Bears, He's got Luther Burden of the Niners. I do think Luther Burden would be a good fit, good Debo replacement. I just don't think the Niners are going to pick him because they already have 5 decent receivers. And when you have 5 receivers, you don't draft a receiver 11. You take a receiver on day 3 if you like him, but you don't take him early. It's just, I don't think that's what's going to happen.
What does their tight end depth chart look like?
They have Kittle. The backup is Luke Farrell, and the third stringer's Braden Willis.
I mean Dallas. Sorry,
Cowboys.
I got a little bit ahead.
The Cowboys tight end depth chart. They have Jake Ferguson, final year of a rookie deal, and they also have Luke Shoemaker, the former Shoemaker, the former Michigan tight end.
Yeah, for sure. Because I was just thinking, I had them.
But I gave the Cowboys McMillan because if you have Ferguson, Shoemaker, CeeDee Lamb, and you add McMillan, you can move the freaking South Alabama receiver. Crap, forgot him. He was on Dallas last year. You can move him over to slot receiver.
And I will tell you one thing about Dallas.
You can move Jalen Tolbert over to slot receiver. That's basically what you can do, and that's a good. Because right now, Jalen Tolbert's your number 2 receiver, and Jonathan Mingo, the Panthers' second-round pick's your slot. But ideally, you'd like to have Tolbert as your number 3 and Mingo as your number 4 as a high-end backup. And you can keep Kevontae Turpin and Jalen Brooks as your backups, but ideally, McMillan as your number 2 pretty much solves your receiver problems.
I'm going to tell you one thing, man. They absolutely stole Joe Milton from the Patriots. And actually,
I had a backup grade on Milton. I'm happy he's gone. Yes.
I had a second-round grade on him. His only the major
all he did was arm strength.
He
brought nothing else to the table outside of arm strength.
What I'm saying. Yeah, and that's what I mean was, he always throws a fastball, and that only works for some quarterbacks, John Elway could do it, certain other ones could do it, but Joey Harrington, he came in and that's all he threw. He's
a one progression takeoff and run QB, but he has a great arm. But that only gets you so far once teams game plan around you. But when you're a rookie, teams and your third string teams really don't game plan around you. But
But he also picked the Cowboys. They had trade offers set up from,
and I'm guessing the Browns were one of those 2 teams because Joey and I discussed one of the teams gave up offered a 4th for him, and I'm guessing that was the Browns because he'd be cheap, he'd be on a rookie deal, and I'm guessing Milton chose Dallas over what the other team that offered a 4th, which I'm guessing was the Browns. But I went McMillan to Dallas. It just makes a lot of sense for Dak Prescott. You get that second weapon. Dolphins, I went with Xavier Watts. They lost Javon Holland.
Can I just say something on the Milton grade?
I don't want to talk about I don't want to talk about a guy I had a backup grade on. I don't. I'm glad he's off the Patriots.
You mentioned it.
William mentioned it. I didn't mention it. William mentioned it. Don't drag me into your can of degeneracy when I don't associate myself with that rabbit hole. Don't drag me down the rabbit hole. Joe Milton is a player that got traded during the NFL draft. He's not a player in the draft. He is a guy who got traded. So he's not a player in this year's draft.
This is illegitimacy, and this is degeneracy season.
It's draft season. It's not degeneracy season. It's draft season. It's draft season. It's not degeneracy season.
Anyway, who we got next, man?
It's draft season. It's not degeneracy season. Don't bring up Milton again. I'm gonna mute somebody if you bring up a trade. We're talking about players in this year's draft. I want to talk about guys in the class this year. I don't want to talk about player. I just, I had a backup grade on Milton. I like Milton more than Brissett, but that's all. And I had guys like Kevin Hogan and Cody Kessler who sucked for the Browns graded ahead of Brissett. So I just think it's laughable that Brissett's still in the league. But hey, the Dolphins, they got Xavier Watts.
That's
I think
interesting.
Xavier Watts is a great fit for Miami. Right now, the Dolphins' current safeties, they have Ashton Davis at free safety, and they got Ifeatu Melifonwu from the Lions as their strong safety, and they're both on one-year deals. I think Watts is an upgrade over both of those guys. So Xavier Watts was the best player on my board. This pick just made too much sense for Miami.
I almost pulled him in the second round of our mock draft for the Giants, but they had signed Javon Holland, and they had that other second round safety. So
they got Tyler Nubin from last year's
him.
draft.
There
Minnesota
you
safety.
go.
Yep,
but
still in a rookie deal for 3 more years.
I like him at 13, man.
Yeah, the Colts, I went with Kelvin Banks. I know the Colts need a tight end. I have a friend who's a Colts fan, and she loves Kelvin Banks. So I am heaving a Hail, but we haven't talked since my friend went to Germany, so I am heaving a Hail Mary like Anthony Richardson, hoping for some communication, hoping for some feedback, but I'm not desperate. I'm heaving for a Hail Mary like Richardson down by 5 with 15 seconds left in the game. But, here's the thing. If you're not going to commit to Bernard Raymond, your third-round pick at left tackle, if you're not going to extend him, reload and draft Kelvin Banks. It just makes a lot of sense logistically. You get a new blind side on a rookie deal. You have the 5th-year option. You'd have Kelvin Banks at left tackle, Quentin Nelson at left guard, Bortolini at center on a rookie deal for 3 more years, Goncalves, Pitt right tackle, who's moving inside to right guard on a rookie deal for 3 more years, and Braden Smith. And the only guys you'd have to pay are Nelson and Smith. And you can keep everyone else on rookie salaries for the next 3 years. So I think that is extremely advantageous if you're the Colts and you're looking for continuity on the offensive line for Anthony Richardson. Right now, Richardson's going to be competing with Daniel Jones for the starting quarterback job.
And I'm going to play Grinch again here. I do see Daniel Jones actually, he can beat Anthony Richardson out.
If Jones beats him, Richardson's going to get traded. And I bet I would not be shocked if a team like the Raiders or a team like the Browns ended up trading for him.
I was about to say the Browns. But I mean,
they would only do it if they could keep their first-round picks, though. They would only trade for him if they could keep their number ones.
I've said it before. Daniel Jones had eerily similar stats to Trevor Lawrence, and everybody was calling him trash and garbage and everything else, dude. And it's like, Daniel Jones, he just played on a horrible team with the Giants. Joe Schoen has actually screwed that team. I mean, completely. Even Brian Daboll, came out and was saying stuff about them signing Russell Wilson and what's his name? Winston. But that team is a mess, and they just
I went offensive
there.
line. I know the Colts need tight end, they need safety, they got multiple needs. Falcons, I went Jalen Walker. I think Jalen Walker, I'm not high on Jalen Walker. I think Jalen Walker's worse prospect than Trayvon Walker, and I was not high on Trayvon Walker, but he went number 1 overall. But Jalen Walker, Falcons need a 34 right outside linebacker. Most of the edge rushers left on the board are defensive ends. So Jalen Walker's really the only guy that fits. It's him or Mike.
At 6'1", 243, man. That he's a pretty small dude for
but the Falcons won a 34. Matt Judon's a UFA. They didn't bring him back. Jalen Walker's really the only guy that fits that defense because JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Landon Jackson, those are all defensive ends. Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, those are all defensive ends in a 43. Falcons need a 34 edge rusher, and Jalen Walker and Mike Green out of Marshall are really the only 2 guys that fit that bill. So the Falcons are going to end up in a situation where they either draft for need and reach for an edge rusher, or who knows what they do. Maybe they should. I would trade the pick and try to get more number 1s if I'm Atlanta, but they're not going to do that. Or if you can trade the pick and get a team to take on Cousins' contract, I'd be okay with that. But I don't think the Falcons are going to do that. I think they're going to stash him. Arizona,
definitely trade, man.
Arizona, I went Egbuka. Egbuka's 11th on my board. I don't trust Michael Wilson out of Stanford. I did not like Wilson coming out of Stanford. Egbuka, He'd be reunited with Marvin Harrison Jr. And, the Cardinals, they went Buckeyes in the first round each of the last 2 drafts. Paris Johnson Jr. at left tackle in 2023, Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver in 2024. You'd have Marvin Harrison Jr., Egbuka, and Trey McBride for 4 years as Kyler Murray weapons. And you get
Trey McBride
as a slot.
And Trey McBride is arguably the best tight end in the league right now.
I mean, I had him on my fantasy team last year. Lost a heartbreaker in the championship, but it's like he was very good.
I drafted him in.
I got him in round 7. That's the thing. Is a keeper league. I got him in round 7.
Oh, did you? In my dynasty, I picked him at like, what was it, 2.5 or something like that.
Yeah.
And no, he's definitely paid off.
Definitely.
My kid knows him from CSU. They went to school together, so that's actually kind of cool. That's why I'm definitely a fan.
Bengals, I went Booker. It was between Nolan and Booker. I went Booker because I think Booker's versatile enough to play both guard spots, and I really couldn't figure out another fit. And the Bengals have 4 defensive tackles on their depth chart. They got Slayton from the Packers. They still have McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins on rookie deals. And even though I like Walter Nolan, the Bengals are a team that would look past his character concerns. The Bengals just have too many defensive tackles. They have Cordell Volston and Cody Ford as their guards. And they brought in an interior offensive line coach that worked under Bill Callahan. So what better way to bolster the Bengals offense than to bring in an interior lineman that will just gel with your offensive line coach who specializes in developing players on the interior, and getting Tyler Booker gives that offensive line coach an ace outside of the tackles, Orlando Brown and Mims. So, and you got the weapons locked up. You got Chase, Higgins, and Gesicki all locked up. You got Trey Hendrickson locked up. You got Trey Hendrickson in a contract year. You got Osai extended. You got Miles Murphy back. BJ Hill is the starting defensive tackle. You got Chris Jenkins Jr. taking over for Sheldon Rankins. Pratt, you've got Logan Wilson, Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, Daxton Hill. You also have Josh Newton. Josh Newton had a good rookie year.
Mike Gesicki is also due to hit his ceiling. I mean, being in the league a couple of years, it always takes tight ends.
I mean, Mike Gesicki had a better combine than Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews was always my tight end 1 for the draft. But the combine Gesicki had kind of tipped the scales in his favor. It caused him to be the first tight end drafted. But yeah.
The dude runs low to the ground, man. It's for being a 6'6" guy. I mean, it's kind of
Booker just made too much sense for the Bengals because as much as I like Volson and Cody Ford, Booker's an upgrade over both of them.
Yeah, this is a pretty good draft so far, Chris. I like it.
Bengals, Seahawks get Jahdae Barron at 18. I gave Barron an A+ in zone and an A in press and a B- in man coverage, but Barron's going to Seattle as a nickel, and you have Woolen on a rookie deal for 1 more year. You have Witherspoon. You can start him out as a nickel. Right now, Trey Brown or somebody's the nickel for Seattle, but they need to upgrade. Buccaneers get a safety. They get Nick Eamon-Worry.
The workout warrior.
Warrior from the combine. They right now they have an undrafted free agent as their starting safety next to Winfield. So Eamon-Worry goes to Buck. Broncos get Walter Nolan. Why? It's very simple. You have John Franklin Myers, Zach Allen, both in contract years. You also extended DJ Jones. So what does that leave? That leaves reloading at 5 technique since you've addressed all of your needs. You got, the Broncos need a tight end. They got Ingram from the Jaguars, and Adam Troutman, who worked under Sean Payton with the Saints, is back. They could get a receiver
as well.
They could get a receiver as well, but I think Walter Nolan's a really good fit for Denver. Franklin Myers, Zach Allen are both in contract years at 34 defensive end.
That's a great no nonsense.
And Walter Nolan can also play nose tackle in addition to 34 defensive end. So Walter Nolan, Broncos will find a role for Walter Nolan. He's 15th on my board. Just makes too much sense for the Broncos at 20.
Yeah. For
I
sure.
went Matthew Golden. This could be where Milroe gets picked, but I went Matthew Golden because if you get Matthew Golden can be your slot receiver as a rookie, and then you can move him over to number 2 receiver when Pickens leaves, because Pickens is on a rookie deal for 1 more year, and Metcalf just signed a 3-year extension with the Steelers.
Mhm.
So you're going to have Metcalf for 4 years, and Golden would essentially be the de facto number 2 receiver after Pickens leaves.
That's
Or
the
you
thing
can
that
keep
I
Pickens.
heard is that the Pittsburgh Steelers are after a special quarterback, and I heard that they liked Milroe.
I think they can get Milroe in the 3rd round. That's why I didn't give him a quarterback at 21. And Pittsburgh hosts next year's
That would
draft.
be great, man.
I think they want to draft a quarterback in the 1st round of next year's draft.
That
so
would
take
the
Pittsburgh
pressure.
did end up getting Milroe, but I went Golden at 21.
That would take the pressure off and let him.
And that's the thing. If you get Matthew Golden, he would only have to be your slot receiver year 1, and then year 2 he could take over for Pickens.
Mm-hmm.
It pretty much solves your problems, so that if you have Mason Rudolph or Milroe in the 3rd round or a QB in next year's draft, if Milroe sucks, once you get the QB, you have the pieces to contend.
Oh man, and they got
and annoy the Browns
Towers,
fan and Joey. But yeah,
Fryermuth and Darnell
you have
Washington.
those pieces. I get Tyler Warren dropped to the Chargers at 22. Yeah, I do think Loveland is a higher ceiling, but I don't think the Chargers are going to pass on Tyler Warren. And if you get Tyler Warren, you'd have Warren as your number 1. Tyler Conklin would be your number 2, and Will Dissly, last year's number 2, would be your 3rd string tight end. That would be a lethal tight end trio for Justin Herbert. Would definitely take some pressure off of McConkey. But Quentin Johnston's still your number 2. Mike Williams is your slot receiver. Darius Davis is your number 4, and Brendan Rice goes from being the number 6 receiver to the number 5 after sitting out as a rookie. Najee Harris is your number 1. Hassan Haskins is your backup. Kamani Vidal is your 3rd string running back. Scott Matlock's the fullback, but I went Tyler Warren for the Chargers.
That is the one thing that I can't understand is why the Niners did not draft Ladd McConkey, over Ricky Pearsall. I mean, I picked him up in my dynasty league. It was like the number 6 pick or something.
A lot of people
dude
thought,
is good, man.
A lot of people thought when it came to a lot of people were thinking that McConkey was going to be a number 2 or number 3 guy at best. I know Joey had some objections with McConkey coming out of Georgia. So,
well, you got stone hands across from him, Quentin Johnston. He's going to catch some touchdowns and stuff.
Wes liked McConkey too. To be fair, Wes Langley liked McConkey. So, I mean,
what I saw with Quentin Johnston was something that, when he knew he was getting the ball, he would hustle and break and do everything. He still got hands of stone. But when he wasn't getting the ball, he wouldn't move as fast at all. I mean, he was just lazy about it. And that's the one big knock. He definitely scored 8 touchdowns. But, when he gets his hands on the ball, he can definitely, score because he's that big and that fast, But he's still got hands of stone, and he's just not a number 1 receiver,
Yeah, and I went Tate Ratledge to Green Bay. Tate Ratledge is 20 on my board. Right now you have Rasheed Walker, Zach Tom, and Sean Ryan at left guard, right tackle, and right guard entering the final year of their rookie deals. And the Packers haven't extended anybody from the 22 draft yet. And frankly, as much as I like Christian Watson and as much as I like Romeo Doubs, Watson hasn't stayed healthy, and Doubs has been too inconsistent to warrant an extension past the rookie deal. So if I'm extending somebody, my thought process is we'll extend Walker. Jordan Morgan, last year's 1st-round pick, will replace Zach Tom next season at right tackle, and Ratledge will replace Sean Ryan, and we'll let both of those guys walk, and we'll reload this offensive line. So Jordan Love only has 2 veterans making money in Aaron Banks and Elgin Jenkins, and everybody else is on rookie deals, which gives Jordan Love some stability on the offensive line.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely.
There wasn't a receiver on my board with a 1st-round grade. There wasn't a corner on my board with a 1st-round grade. So this was a tricky spot to navigate through for Green Bay at 23. I gave the Vikings Deion Walker. Yeah, they have Harrison Phillips at nose tackle. He's more of a 5 technique or a 43 tackle. Walker's a true nose tackle, but you can ease him in, and you have a good starting lineup. The Texans got Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. I mean, they have Sheldon Rankins and they have Tim Settle, but I think Tim Settle's more of a backup, and I think Grant has a really high ceiling. So if you draft Grant, he can complement Rankins. He doesn't have to be the number 1 DT right out of the gate. He can be that complementary starter, and you have most of those core guys. And then, they brought in C.J. Gardner-Johnson from the Eagles. They got E.J. Speed from the Colts. And they've got depth at linebacker, too, with Azeez Al-Shahid, with Christian Harris, Henry To'oTo'o. And Jalen Petir just got extended 3 years, 39 million, 13 million a year. So that did actually happen, by the way.
Nice.
Malachi Starks to the Rams. I mean, I really couldn't give the Rams a player of need. I wanted to go best player available, but my best player available was, I think it was a tackle, and they just extended Alaric Jackson. So Malachi Starks just made the most sense by process of elimination.
I've seen a lot of Jackson Dart being picked here by the Rams.
I don't have a QB with a first. I know people are mocking third QB in the first round, but I have a second round grade on Shedeur Sanders. I've got a first round grade on Cam Ward, and then there's 4 guys I have third round grades on. I'm not mocking a third round QB in the first round. If you want to mock a third round QB in round 2, fine. I can respect that. I don't agree with the thought process if there's better value picks, but
that's not
I can at least understand that.
It's not fair to him at all. He has confidence to regain. He has some things to do to develop properly.
I agree.
To get back to his normal self.
I mean, if you're going to draft a QB in the third, if you're going to draft a QB, it's going to be a low risk, high reward situation. So that if your rookie doesn't get any playing time or he struggles when 26. That's basically what is going to happen with everyone not named Ward and Sanders, I think. But Ravens get Colson,
and that's
Loveland.
The one thing,
Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, and Charlie Kolar have one thing in common. All 3 guys are UFAs next year. Likely and Kolar were draft picks in the 22 draft. Mark Andrews enters the final year of that extension. You draft Colson Loveland. Maybe he does redshirt as a rookie, but he will be the starting tight end 1 by next season. And
yeah, he's going to be a very fast learner and fast starter.
The thing is, if you've got 3 tight ends like Mark Andrews, Likely, and Kolar in contract years, you can trade 2 of those guys. Maybe you bring back Kolar in a cheap team-friendly deal or Likely, and you have Loveland and Likely or Loveland and Kolar, and you trade Kolar and Andrews.
Yeah, that would be
and get some draft capital.
One hell of a tight end room. The one thing that I loved was when I looked up the 49ers top 30 visits, and they had visited with Colson Loveland and Harold Fannin Jr. I was like, yeah, they're going to grab one of them in the second round, But no, on Baltimore, Colson Loveland, with that lineup, I think I heard somewhere that they were maybe talking about trading Mark Andrews, or the subject came up, But Isaiah Likely, coming out of Coastal Carolina, was a good prospect. And Charlie Kolar, coming out of Iowa State with Brock Purdy. I mean,
those were both good picks at the time. The problem is they can't keep any. I probably can only keep one of those 3 after extending Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. That's the problem the Ravens have. And right now, getting Loveland pretty much solves that problem.
I think if they make this pick or draft a tight end, I think Mark Andrews is probably the odd man that's going to get traded.
I agree. Mark Andrews or Likely would get traded because those 2 have the most value. Kolar is a guy you can bring back as a tight end 2 on a team-friendly deal. I think Kolar is probably the most likely to re-sign a team-friendly deal.
Yeah, and tight ends, they have a tendency to get injured to start breaking down at the end of their career.
And Likely still on the rookie deal, so you want to keep him, and Andrews is the guy who'd probably be on the move.
Yep.
The Lions, they get Clay Webb. So there were 3 picks that were in my August 2-round mock draft that remain the same.
Just for
Will
the
Campbell
record,
to
I love
Patriots.
Colston Loveland.
Will Campbell to the Patriots, Luther Burden to the Saints, Clay Webb to the Lions. Those picks remained exactly the same from August to now. So I kept 3 first-round picks exactly the same. He ends my draft cycle at 30. And Clay Webb, I think Clay Webb's a great fit for the Lions. The Commanders, they get Shadamar Stewart here. They traded for Laramie Tunsil. I do think they need an edge, a defensive end. And I think, Colson Loveland, not Colson Loveland. We already talked about Loveland. Shamar Stewart makes a lot of sense for the Commanders. He makes a lot of sense for them because they have a bunch of good a bunch of veteran pass rushers in Clellan Farrell. They've got Dorrance Armstrong Jr., Dietrich Wise Jr., but they don't have that 10-sack artist. And Shamar Stewart, maybe he becomes that for the Commanders, but they gamble on him hoping he becomes that.
Yeah, because Farrell is just a stopgap. He's just kind of like a regular.
And because they traded for Tunsil, I don't see them drafting a left tackle here. That's a big investment to give up all that capital to take Tunsil off the Texans. Bills, Derek Harmon, Oregon. I have a first-round grade on Derek Harmon. Right now, the starter next to Ed Oliver is Daquan Jones. You also got Dwayne Carter, a third-round pick out of Duke, and Larry Ogunjobi, who are good backups, but they're backups to Jones. And if you take Harmon, you got Carter and Ogunjobi competing for that last DT spot, and Jones is your DT3. And it's a very tough interior, not just to pass rush against, but to run against. You got depth on the interior at defensive tackle. You have Balin Spector and Dorian Williams as your backup linebackers. So the front 7, not only quality starters, but depth as well. Dane Jackson's your number 2 corner. Teron Johnson's your nickel. Taylor Rapp's your strong safety. Hamlin's your free safety. Buffalo's got a pretty complete roster for the most part. I do think 17-0 is on the table for Buffalo. Bills' toughest opponents are at Texans. They have Texans did get Cam Robinson at left tackle, to be fair to the Texans. I think the Texans are the toughest road opponent. And then the Bills and Steelers, Bills have to play those teams on the road. I don't think either team can beat the Bills at home. Browns and Steelers just have too many problems. Too many teams right now.
That's interesting. Something happened to my camera.
Yeah. I can keep hearing myself.
Oh, I got to make sure my.
And then the final 2 picks, round 1, Josh Connerly Jr. to the Chiefs. He is blindside from home. You move Jalen Moore to left guard. Boom, that fixes the offensive line. And the Eagles get Nick Scorton at 34, left outside linebacker, to pair with Nolan Smith, who moves to right outside linebacker to replace Josh Sweat, who's on the Cardinals now. He signed with the Cardinals to reunite with the Cardinals' former remember, the Cardinals head coach, the former Eagles defensive coordinator. So that's why that happens. All right. Is your audio fixed? I'm going to get to round 2. I'll check. I can check Sean's message, see if where we're at with the group mock. I'll check Sean's message. William, Joey, do either of you want to say anything about round 1 before we get to round 2? Oh. That was my biggest miss at linebacker, Fred Warner. But yeah, I'm just waiting. All right, so Sean has not gotten back to me. We're going to start round 2. We're going to go Josh Simmons to the Cleveland Browns. DeJuan Jones played right tackle for 4 years in high school and 4 years in college. And my philosophy is where you played is more important than where the team needs you to play. And Browns might need Jones at left tackle, but that's irrelevant when you consider he's an 8-year starter at right tackle. Where you play is more important than where the team needs you to play, because if you're an 8-year right tackle and you're playing left tackle, that is a problem. I don't know if it's a GM problem or a coaching problem, but Josh Simmons is a first-round talent. He fell to 33. You wait to take your quarterback and you fix the offensive line, because worst-case scenario is you have Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett for the next 16 games. Maybe Watson comes back. I don't think he will. Even if he is cleared to throw, I don't think the Browns are going to play him. The fact that Haslam admitted that, I think they're moving on from him. But regardless, he's on the roster due to how massive his contract is. But I have Josh Simmons, the Browns, at 33. The Giants get Donovan Jackson at 34. Donovan Jackson, I have him ahead of Simmons on my big board. But here's the thing. Yahoo did a article, worst free agent signing by the Giants in 2024 is John Runyon Jr. Also, the Giants can cut John Runyon Jr. and save $9,250,000. So Donovan Jackson would be an immediate upgrade over John Runyon Jr., and then you can stash Runyon as a backup and cut him next year. Titans get Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. They get that weapon for Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley. The Jags get Sebastian Castro. Sebastian Castro would replace Andre Sisco, who's no longer on the Jaguars. Xavier Restrepo is the pick for the Raiders. Why? It's very simple. Right now, Jacoby Myers, a number 2 receiver, is your number 1. If we exclude the tight ends, Myers is your number 1 receiver. Trey Tucker is nothing more than number 4 receiver for depth, and he's the number 2 guy. And then you have a slot receiver that's undrafted, and all your backups are undrafted. This is the worst wide receiver room in the league. This is the worst wide receiver room, and it's not close. This is the worst receiver room in the league. It's frankly, it's not close. It's not even close how bad. Because if you have 6 receivers on your roster and the number 3, 4, 5, and 6 guys are all undrafted, William, your number 2 receivers, a guy would be number 4 on most teams, and your number 1's a number 2. That is a pretty horrible receiver room. That is a receiver room that can make Seahawks Geno Smith look like Jets Geno Smith. And it's not Geno's fault. It's just the situation the Raiders have. So Xavier Restrepo makes a lot of sense for the Raiders. Ran 23 out of 30 routes in the route tree. Good route tree. Not a great route tree like Garrett Wilson, but you have to take it at this point because Restrepo's the only guy left that could be an upgrade. Donovan Izaraku goes to the Patriots. Sack artists, 20.5 tackles for a loss, 16.5 sacks, 15 quarterback hurries, very consistent, complements Harold Landry very well. And Donovan Izaraku to the Patriots at 38. The Bears get Jack Sawyer to pair with Sweat. Riley goes to the Saints at 40. Right now, Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry are the only corners on the roster of the Saints. So you get Riley, he's your nickel corner. And you just reload with Paulson and Debo gone. Bears get Tez Johnson. Right now, they don't have a slot receiver next to Moore and Odunze, so they get a receiver here. Tez Johnson. Caleb Williams gets another weapon. And they get Tez Johnson. The Jets get Membu at 42. The 49ers get Tyleik Williams. I had a first-round grade on Tyleik at the beginning of the year, but he fell to round 2. So in this situation, the Giants have James Pierce Jr. and they have Tyleik Williams, and those are their weapons. Those are their interior. Those are the building blocks for that defensive line, Williams. So Tyleik Williams just makes a lot of sense. Judkins is a Cowboy. I'm not going to go in depth with this because I want to save rounds 2 through 7 next week. Harold Fannin fell to the Colts. Billy Bowman. See, like when I do mocks, I like to give my thoughts on each pick in depth, detail by detail. When Joey does a mock, he likes to have fun and he likes to pick apart the mock and go into reasonings for why he'd make a pick without even if it's not the consensus pick or even if there's a detail he doesn't remember at the top of his head. But Mike Green, I got him going to the Cardinals here. I know Mike Green's in the first round, but I honestly have a day 3 grade on Jalen Walker, Mike Green, and Membo. but Mike Green's going to get picked. The Cardinals need a second edge rusher next to Josh Sweat. Mike Green could be an option here at 47. Dolphins, they got to get his corner next to Ramsey. Siobhan Revel out of East Carolina is a great fit for the Dolphins at 48. You get Watson round 1, you get Revel in round 2, and you build that secondary up. I mean, Revel, I gave him an A in man coverage, a B in zone, a B plus in press, a B in run stuffing. Very solid corner. He missed almost the season due to injuries. JT Tuimoloau fell to the Bengals. You get that fourth pass rusher next to Hendrickson and Osai and Miles Murphy. So, Seahawks got O'Marion Hampton. Why? Kenneth Walker, 1 year left on a rookie deal. Zach Charbonnet, 2 years left on a rookie deal. I think Hampton has more upside than Charbonnet and just as much as Walker. And if you don't want to pay Walker, draft Hampton and reload. It's very simple, William. Hampton was the best player on the board here. So you put him in Seattle, a run-heavy team, and you let him thrive there. And you let Walker test free agency if he wants too much money. The Broncos got Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers with the next pick. Then Seattle got Dylan Fairchild as their left guard. Bucks got Maxwell Hairston, who was great in 2023. Only played 6 games in 2024, but he's good enough to supplant Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum as the number 1 corner. I gave him an A+ in man and zone, an A- in press, can play any coverage scheme. Packers get Landon Jackson to pair with Gary. Right now, Kingsley Engabare and Lucas Van Ness are both competing for that left end job, but you throw Landon Jackson in there. Now you have 4 good defensive ends. I know Packers fans are pissed that I haven't given them a center or a wide receiver or a corner, but the way the board, I've gone best available over need this year, William. And usually I draft for need. You can ask Joey, he'll tell you in most years I draft for need. But this year I'm drafting based on what my board looks like, because I feel like a lot of teams have done a good job filling out their depth charts and making their rosters more competitive. So it just makes more sense. I mean, Jihad Campbell, the Chargers, Tui Pelotu and Khalil Mack are the starting pass rushers at 34, right outside linebacker. Bosa's gone. Jihad Campbell makes a lot of sense here. The Bills get Jabbar Muhammad. I gave Muhammad an A in man, a C in zone, a B in press. Maybe not the best fit, but Christian Benford just got a 4-year extension. Dane Jackson's a 1-year stopgap. And the Bills love Teron Johnson. They've kept him at nickel every year. They're going to continue to keep him at nickel as long as they got the cap space. So they draft a corner, develop him for a year, hope he replaces Dane Jackson in a rookie deal. I think that's the Brandon Beane thought process, and Jabbar Muhammad's my top guy on the board. Panthers got Malachi Moore. Malachi Moore makes a lot of sense. You have Trevon Moehrig at strong safety, but you don't have that guy to complement him. And Malachi Moore is just a good fit for the Panthers in round 2. I gave Moore an A in run stuffing, but I gave him a B in man, a B in plus in zone, a B- in press. Texans, Ariante Ursary, Minnesota. Ursary is a guy that a lot of people had in the late first at the beginning of the year. I have a second on him for good reason, William, but you get Ursary here, and you get your left tackle for Mr. CJ Stroud. And the Ravens ended up with Benjamin Morrison, the Notre Dame corner. I mean, the Ravens got Chidobe Awuzie in free agency, but Awuzie ended up losing the starting corner job to Jarvis Brownlee. And what that tells me is that, the Ravens, they got to bring in competition for Awuzie, and I just think Benjamin Morrison, preseason top 10 pick, just too good for Baltimore to pass on in round 2. So Colson Loveland and Benjamin Morrison are both Ravens in this mock draft. And yeah, I know that. And the Lions, they get Danny Stutzman at 60. Both Alex Anzalone and Malcolm Rodriguez are in contract years. Jack Campbell's still in a rookie deal, but you get Stutzman here. I have him listed as a middle linebacker, but I also point out in my write-up that he can play multiple linebacker roles, can play weak side, can play the Sam, can play the Will, 109 total tackles. I know you're high on Stutzman too, William, so Stutzman to the Lions makes a lot of sense at 60. Alfred Collins goes to the Commanders as a defensive tackle for depth. I have not heard. Okay, William's still here. What the hell? What the hell is wrong with me? Sorry, William. I don't I don't deserve friend as amazing as you, but I'm gonna turn your
What
camera
up,
back
buddy?
on now.
Oh, I was having fun.
I'm
listening to
turning
your,
I'm turning your
listening to
camera back
picks.
on. I don't know what's going on with Restream.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I lost sound for a minute, and
Okay, I turned
was
your
shutting off
camera
my
back
phone.
on. Our audience can hear you, man, but I've been
Sweet.
flying through these picks. This is what happens when I'm in mock draft mode. It's like a drug addiction. But yeah.
I just read about Gray Zabel from Daniel Kelly.
I have Gray Zabel ranked lower on my board than and I have Ursery ahead of Zabel on my board. But in this scenario, Zabel falls to the Bills, and Zabel can play all 5 spots on the interior. So would Zabel be a day 1 starter in Buffalo? I say no. You have
Probably
Deion
not.
Dawkins, you have David Edwards, McGovern, Osiris Torrance, and Spencer Brown all back. All 5 of your starters from last year on the offensive line are back.
Yeah.
But if Zabel falls to 62, you can't pass on him. He's the best value pick at this point. He probably would start out as a swing tackle, but if you were so hell-bent on playing him, you could replace David Edwards with Zabel. That is one thing you could do.
I think that there's absolutely
and
no
Zabel
reason.
would play left guard where Edwards plays. Because I don't see him replacing Dawkins or Brown. I don't see him replacing McGovern. And Osiris Torrance is on a rookie deal still. So Edwards is really the only guy Zabel could replace on the Bills.
I don't see any reason why the Buffalo Bills shouldn't be in the Super Bowl next year. They are a great team, other than the fact that they get a lot more penalties called on them than Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And, Josh Allen is just absolute, he is a specimen. He is a beast.
You're going to have to wait one more year. Super Bowl 61 is going to be the Bills year, but I
remember you saying that.
I think it's going to be the Bengals this year. But what's going to happen is the Bills go 17-0 and they lose the Bengals in the divisional round. And that's what pisses off the Bills. That is what infuriates them. And then they go out and they get the 1 seed again, and then they win the Super Bowl in 61. That's how
I want
to
see
go down.
How Keon Coleman, he had a setback, had a slight
and then
injury.
Patriots fans troll Bills fans with 17-1 memes, because if the Dolphins go 17-0 and then the Patriots go 18-1 and get roasted by the Dolphins, the Bills go 17-0 with a 17-game schedule and lose in the divisional round, then Patriots fans and Dolphins fans roast Bills fans for going 17-1.
I like that, bro.
And then the Bills end up taking all that 17-0 rage, because the Bills' toughest opponents are all home games. They play the Eagles at home, they play the Chiefs at home, they play the Bengals at home, they play the Ravens at home. At Steelers, at Texans, at Browns are the toughest opponents for the Bills, and I don't think the Steelers and Browns did enough this offseason to beat the Bills, even with home field. Joey might disagree with me on that. That's fine, but I honestly don't think those teams did enough to close the gap with the Bills. So I'm predicting a 17-0 season for the Buffalo Bills. But I think they lose in the playoffs. And they finish the year 17-1 with an undefeated regular season and a divisional round loss to Joe Burrow. And then the Chiefs play the Bengals in Arrowhead again, but the Bengals win. That's what I think. And if the Bengals do play, and if the Chiefs do get another AFC title game and it's against the Bengals, I will go to Texas Roadhouse, because Texas Roadhouse is bad luck for Patrick Mahomes. I went to Texas Roadhouse twice, and the Chiefs lost on both occasions in the AFC Championship against Brady, with the Patriots, and Burrow. Denzel Burke makes a lot of sense for the Chiefs. They need a good number 2 corner next to McDuffie with the L'Jarius Sneed gone. Denzel Burke out of Ohio State is the guy that I ended up giving the Chiefs at 63. And then to wrap up round 2, I went with A minus in zone, A minus in press for Denzel Burke. And then I gave the Eagles Emory Jones. I mean, Lane Johnson, as much as I love Lane Johnson, he's getting older. 4th overall pick in 2013. And you got to get his successor. You don't have to get rid of Lane Johnson if he wants to stay with the Eagles, but you got to get his successor. You got to plant that foundation. And then round 3 is really where all the chaos begins. And I'll quickly get through round 3. I know William's got some stuff he wants to say. I know Joey wants to say some stuff, maybe disagree with me on some picks, roast, whatever. Well, I want to get through round 3 first. Quinn Ewers to the Giants. Why? Winston and Wilson have 1-year deals. You roll the dice on Ewers. If Ewers becomes the guy we think he can become, you just got to steal at 65. And if he doesn't, no
Very
sweat.
much.
You can get a QB in round 1 or 2 next year, and you still have Ewers on a rookie deal for 3 more years.
Yeah, that would be.
So it's a win-win either way.
Place for
It's a win-win. Chiefs,
Yeah,
Jonas
absolutely
Savannah out of
okay.
Arizona. It's very simple. The Chiefs can cut Jawan Taylor next year at right tackle and save $20 million against the cap. Jawan Taylor was promising in Jacksonville, especially the last 2 years of that rookie deal, but he has been awful in Kansas City. Jawan Taylor has been a massive liability on that offensive line. And they have to deal with that contract for 1 more year, but next year they can get out of that contract and they save $20 million against the cap for cutting him. So I think if the Chiefs have an opportunity to draft a right tackle, and it's the best player on the board. In this case, Jonas Savannah would be the best player on the board. Chiefs have to double up at tackle because then they'd have their guy if they cut Jawan Taylor next year. And you can use that $20 million to bring back Travis Kelce if he wants to come back for 1 more year, or you can do whatever with that $20 million. So it's a win-win either way.
Like
Browns get Jackson Dart. Right now you have Flacco and Pickett. You also have Deshaun Watson. But my thought process is simple. You get Hunter or Carter at 2. You get a left tackle like Simmons, so DeJuan Jones stays at right tackle, and then you get your quarterback at 67. You can get a running back with the Bills' 3rd round pick. But Jackson Dart is my.
This is interesting, Chris. You may be on the right track.
Well, if a first-round left tackle drops to 33,
Milrow or Dart, but I haven't heard where.
if a first-round left tackle drops to 33, you have to pick him. If Banks, Will Campbell, Connerly, or Simmons drops to 33, you have to pick him. If all 4 go in the first round and you believe in DeJuan Jones, fine. I'll respect that. But if any of those 4 drop to 33, you pick them, you keep Jones at right tackle, and you take whatever quarterback's there at 67.
All right, so
that's pretty much the thought process.
I do think your thought process on the quarterback situation is 100% legitimate, because I have heard it's either going to be, I heard it's going to be.
I got Dart higher on Milrow on my board. That's why I went with Dart at 67.
I heard both of them blew the clouds away in the interviews. So
I've got Dart at 67.
Throw out a name or 2 here, and that would be Kyle McCord, and that would.
I'm not high on Kyle McCord. He was a liability at Ohio State. He did better at Syracuse, but he was a massive liability to Ohio State last year. But he did better at Syracuse. I'll give him that. But the rate
starting, man.
What Coach said about McCord, that McCord at his best would make you look like a genius. At his worst, he would get everybody in the building fired.
Ryan Day discarded him and won a national championship. Ryan Day decided to send Will Howard to the graveyard in Yu-Gi-Oh terms, and he won a national championship with Will Howard by discarding Kyle McCord and letting him enter the portal. So he discarded Kyle McCord and won a national title.
Well, the way it was worded was that he
didn't want to compete for the job. That's the reason he left. That's a legit reason
too. His dad played for Rutgers back in the day. He was closer to home.
Yeah, but the Raiders, I didn't give the Raiders Milrow because they gave Geno a 3-year extension.
Reason, really? You don't want to compete?
You're not entitled to the job. You're not entitled to the job unless you win a national championship. And he didn't win a championship.
I think Kyle McCord could have won that championship just the same.
I am putting that new person in their place. I am putting them down, and that's it.
And Will Howard didn't want to compete with the recruits, the younger guys. And they went out, they got a quarterback in the portal, and basically Ohio State and Miami were in a bidding war for Cam Ward.
Yeah.
And if Ohio State had won that bidding war, they would have gone undefeated. There is zero doubt about that. You give Cam Ward, Jeremiah Smith, Tate, and Egbuka, Buckeyes go undefeated. There is
That
zero
would've
doubt
been
about
wicked.
that in my mind. Even with Cam Ward playing his worst game of the year, they would still have scored enough points to beat Michigan. As good as Michigan is, Cam Ward would have found a way to beat them. Because you look at Cam Ward's 3 losses this year, they were all by 5 points or less. And the Hurricanes scored 30 points in each of those losses. So you can't blame Cam Ward for those losses. And the Raiders was a tough team at 68 because I have Devin Neal as the best player on my board, and I have a second-round grade on Devin Neal, but Jalen Milroe also fills the need for the Raiders at quarterback. But here's the thing. The Raiders can cut Geno Smith after next year, but they'd only save like $1 million. And Geno's under contract till 2028. Aiden O'Connell's under contract till 2027. So if I have to choose between a QB and best player on the board for the Raiders with the contract structurings for Aiden O'Connell and Geno, I'm taking the best player on the board. So after giving the Raiders Restrepo in round 2 and Mason Graham in round 1, we're getting them a number 1 running back in Devin Neal. Just makes more sense.
I will say this, though. This is what I told Garrett Bush, on 92.3 The Fan, Ultimate Clean Sports Show. I told him that Milroe, with his insane talent, physical talent, and he has a degree in business and a master's in sports management, he can learn anything. He's one of the smartest people out there. If you sit him for a year behind an established veteran, I don't care what team you are, is there any quarterback in this draft that you can say, no, he is so smart. He can sit back and watch and mimic and be a franchise quarterback simply because he can learn anything.
Milroe could be the Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts of this draft, but he could also be the Malik Willis of this draft and burn you. That's why
His potential is so great,
but his floor is so low.
Deep.
He loves
testing
I don't
deep.
think he's a.
I look at it, intelligence over everything. In my dating life, in my scouting, everything. If you see somebody like Jalen Milroe, who has that type of intelligence
and high character,
that he has basically 12 years of degrees in 4, I'm looking at it like, if I can sit him for a year behind a veteran with the physical talent that he has, I'm taking it. I don't care where.
I'm looking at Devin Neal. I'm looking at best player versus need. If I've got Devin Neal in the 60s, like 62 on my board, and I've got Milroe at 81, and I'm the Raiders, you can go either way here, but I'm going for value.
Between the ears. The greatest muscle is between the ears, and he's got probably the best muscle between the ears that we've seen in 20 years. You have to take that into consideration. It's not big
I
enough
don't
to
think
get him in
Milroe's
round
this.
one. It's not big enough to get him in round 1. Don't get me wrong. But it's big enough that you have to consider him far earlier than
I considered him at 68, but I ultimately went with Neal because the Raiders also need a running back. They're starting running backs Mostert.
There's one thing too.
That was a very tough decision.
Richardson was an injury risk. He had,
Milroe is a very low floor. As much as you like him, I don't think his ceiling's higher than Cam Ward's. And number 2, he has a very low floor. I know you love him, but he does have a very low floor, despite having a high ceiling too.
Well, yeah, but
a lot of it does come down to fit.
Everything Joey said was 100% correct on
yes,
it
was
how smart this dude is, and like I said, I love the way that he plays ball. He tests, the the secondary deep a lot. You know, he loves doing it, and he can
Yeah, but
drop
Devin
some
Neal's in your
passes.
top 32. If a player in your top 32 drops to you and a quarterback who's
Devin
got a
Neal
high upside but
was-
is 81st on your board still there, and
I
you need a
was,
running back and a quarterback, you take the running back if you got a QB under contract for multiple years, because next year's QB class could be better than this one.
when I was
I just wanted to point out that
They're both great suggestions in their own right, but I went for value over need. Neal's in your top 32.
People knew about Jalen Milroe's, mental side of his game, and
Yeah.
mental side of his life, and I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
No argument, no disagreement about anything. I just wanted to point out
It's-
where he sat.
Yeah, but looking at Neal, I mean, you had Neal in your top 32. I mean, this guy's been very consistent, and I have Neal in my top 64. So that's why I went Neal over a QB.
That's why I'm saying I'm not disagreeing with anything.
They're both great selections in their own right. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. That's why
Neal
it's the
Pop-
toughest decision.
It's like, I
Neal.
just don't think people realize that
We'll get to Milroe.
Jalen Milroe has 12 years of college education in 4. He got his degree in business management in 3 years. And then got a master's in sports management in 4.
you know, Rocky Lombardi.
That's basically 7 years. He had 12 years of education.
We've spent too much time on Milroe. We'll get to Milroe when we get to Pittsburgh. We'll get to Milroe when we get to Pittsburgh. I have Milroe going to the Steelers at 81. We're on pick 68. I want to move to pick 69. I'm
Just
trying.
throwing this out there.
I don't want to
Rocky
go off
Lombardi.
topic. I like everything structured in a certain order, okay? And I'm a stickler for structure when it comes to mock drafts. Okay? That's probably my blandest quality, but it's there. It's just ingrained in me. It's not gonna
You're flawed.
We love you, Chris.
I'm not bad, I'm not flawed. I'm rigid. I'm very stubborn and very rigid when it comes to mock drafts. I like talking about the team. I don't need
Love you,
alcohol.
bro.
I don't need alcohol when I have Torrey Horton joining Stephon Diggs in New England. And he ran a
still love
4.48
you,
at the
bro.
combine, 2 seasons of 1,000 yards. I know he got injured this year, but
I would
I
love
think
to
Torrey
see
Horton's
this
going to be
pick
a
right
steal
here,
in
man.
this draft.
Drake May
Arondre-
would go off.
Yeah, agreed. Jaguars got Arondre Gadsden. Why? Because I did not like Brenton Strange. I had Brenton Strange graded 20 out of 20 tight ends. Johnny Munt,
No.
Hunter Long are both backups. And Arondre Gadsden, I think he can beat out all of them for the starting tight end job in Jacksonville. So Arondre Gadsden out of Syracuse goes to the Jaguars.
He popped on film with McCord. I mean, Rondé Gadsden.
I feel like LaQuint Allen and Gadsden are the 2 best players on Syracuse's offense. I think McCord's the 3rd best player on that offense.
I actually think he could compete to start immediately, even
He can.
rounds.
On the
Gadsden
S2
would start over Munt, Hunter Long, and Brenton Strange at tight end. I think he'd be a day 1 starter at 70.
Strange was solid when I saw him live, but he did not do anything.
And he was my tight end 20 out of 20. I had Tyler Warren and the other Penn State tight end who got picked in last year's draft ahead of Theo Johnson. I had both of them ahead of Strange on my board. You can understand why.
Yeah, it's like I will amend that statement and say he impressed me.
I like Strange as a tight end too, but the problem is I don't like him enough to be a tight end 1. And
He impressed me past what I thought he would be, but he didn't impress me enough that he would actually be somebody that I wouldn't.
yeah.
If I drafted anybody,
Yeah.
I'd probably be an upgrade over.
And Gadsden's a good fit for Jacksonville at 70. Ken LeBlanc actually took Gadsden at 70. The Saints, they get Jalen Travis at 71. I mean, with Ryan Ramczyk's injuries, I feel like it's time to bring in a guy to push Trevor Penning. You don't have to bench Trevor Penning yet, but he was benched multiple times as a rookie. He has stepped up the last year and a half, last 2 years, but I think it's time to bring somebody in to push him. Jalen Travis out of Iowa State was the best player on my board. Played right tackle at Princeton, left tackle at Iowa State. I got Travis here. Jonas Sanker to the Bears.
I thought Penning was benched last year for some.
Penning was benched 2 times as a rookie.
Oh, okay.
Or-
That's like,
He might have.
how many times he was benched?
He was benched a few times as a rookie, and he may have been benched last year. I don't remember. I think he played all 16, 17 games in 2024, but I think he was benched twice in either 2022 or 2023. But regardless, I think Jalen Travis makes a lot of sense. He pushes Penning for that right tackle job, especially if you don't want to tender Penning.
I might come out of retirement if that's the case, because I could probably beat this douchebag out, and it's like, give me $1 million a year, I'll be fine. Carry my ass out on a stretcher.
Okay.
It's like, I'll take it.
All right. All right.
And I'll still beat his ass out.
Jonas Sanker to the Bears. Sanker's the only player with a round 2 grade still on my board, and Brisker's in the final year of his rookie deal. He missed 11 games last year. If you don't want to pay Brisker, just draft in their safety with a much cheaper contract and just reload. It's very simple. Jonas Sanker to the Bears. I gave the Jets Howard Cross the second. They did add Derek Nottie and Byron Cowart in free agency, but Cowart was a liability for the Bears. Nottie is a good addition from the Chiefs, but he did lose the D-tackle job to Tershawn Wharton down the stretch. So even with those additions, I think, even though I like Nottie as a DT2, he's more of a DT3 at this point. I think Cross is the one guy left in the 3rd round that can beat out Nottie for that starting job next to Williams. So that was kind of...
And here's the thing about Cross. Cross is not much of a run stopper, but he is an energetic pass rusher. That's what the Bears need up the middle.
Well, I gave to the Jets. The Jets did not. The Bears got Jonas Sanker. The Jets got Howard Cross. So
guess what? He'll do the same thing for the Jets. So
the Bears got Grady Jarrett. The Bears got Grady Jarrett. That's why I didn't mock a defensive tackle to the Bears. I can get one on day 3 if they want, but they've got Grady Jarrett and Gervon Dexter. They really don't need to take a defensive tackle before day 3. It's a deep defensive tackle draft.
Oh yeah, it's like we all agree that's probably the best defensive tackle draft.
All right. Panthers get Jordan Hancock. They need a corner to pair with Chop. They need a corner to push Chop Smith-Wade, who I do like. He did better than I expected as a 5th-round pick, but they do need a nickel corner, and Jordan Hancock just makes a lot of sense for the Panthers. 49ers get Jonah Monheim at center, my top-ranked center in the draft. I know Field Yates said Jared Wilson's his top center by a wide margin. I've got Wilson in round 4. I've got Monheim in round 3. Monheim just checks more boxes for me, and Monheim's a pick for the San Francisco 49ers. Kevin Winston Jr. at Penn State. Best player on my board that's not a running back is Kevin Winston Jr. He would be a backup to Malik Hooker. And if Hooker gets injured, Winston's a guy who can come in and take his job. Because I gave Winston an A-man, A in zone, an A- in press, an A in run stuffing, and an A- in hard hitting. And I think he can develop into a star with all those positive attributes. I do think Winston has a chance to become a star. The Patriots, Azaria Thomas. I was going to mock Ricardo Hallman here, but Ricardo Hallman went back to Wisconsin. I caught on to that very late in the process. So Azaria Thomas out of Florida State moves up. He can compete with Marcus Jones for nickel. And if he wins that job, he would play next to Gonzalez and Carlton Davis. Then the Cardinals
at the Senior Bowl was a little bit, he got burned a few times, but he also flashed a few times.
It's not just the fact that he got burned. I was watching Azaria Thomas. He looked away from a receiver on a play because he was trying to read what the quarterback was doing. He looked away from a receiver, did not have his eyes on the receiver. And yes, I gave Azaria Thomas an A+ in man, an A- in zone, an A+ in press. But he does not lock his eyes on the wide receiver all the time. And that drives coaches nuts.
He needs more consistency, man. For real.
He does have the coverage and technique down, but he doesn't lock his eyes on the receiver consistently, and it just drives coaches nuts. But he's good enough to take a flyer on at 77. Cardinals get Kobe Bryant, Arizona, Kansas corner. I gave him an A in man, an A in zone, a D in press. But he can play man or zone, be an asset for Arizona. Luke Kandler's a Texan. He can compete with the current right guard, Juice Scruggs, for that right guard job. And if he doesn't get it, he'll be a very good backup. Really, the only weakness with Kandler is zone blocking. Pass blocking's there, footwork, pass blocking, strength, run blocking, footwork, run blocking, pancake blocking, pull blocking, cut blocking from a right guard is there. Zone blocking is really the only thing Kandler needs to improve, but he checks every other box. If you just use him as a pass blocker or a run blocker instead of a zone blocker, Texans don't really use a lot of zone blocking, so, I mean, I think that's a good fit for him, and, you know, you don't have to start him right away because you do have Juice Scruggs, you have Jarrett Patterson at center, you have Scruggs at right guard, so, and if he does impress, if Kandler impresses enough to earn a day one starting job, you can just move Scruggs back to center and bench Jarrett Patterson. It's a win-win situation because Houston drafted 2 centers in 2023 and hit on both of them. So it's a really good situation for Houston here, Joey, because Houston, they got Kenneth Grant, their first pick, and then they got Ursery from Minnesota in round 2, now Luke Kandler here. So really patching up that line for Stroud. Texans got Ole Gordon.
Yeah, that's, you know, I think even if the Texans ace this draft, I still think they lose because they lost one of the best left tackles in the NFL.
But they brought in Cam Robinson, but if you develop Ursery,
they're gearing themselves up for the future. They're solidifying everything else. So even if they lost here, if we could back a year or so, it may have turned out, especially if they fill that left tackle.
Because I have
in free agency or whatever.
They got Cam Robinson on a 1-year deal, and I gave them Ursery out of Minnesota in round 2. And Ursery has potential to develop into a Pro Bowler, but I also feel like he's a guy who needs at least 1 year of development on the bench. 1 year. Doesn't need 2 years, but he needs 1 year. Cam Robinson's that fill-in player. Ursery develops behind him. That's kind of...
That may be the bridge, because Cam Robinson, you say, he signed...
Because he signed a 1-year deal, and it was cheaper than what the Texans could get for Tunsil, so...
Yeah, so that may be the saving grace that propels, you know, this...
And Ursery and...
into a better situation, but, you know...
Short term, it does hurt them, but... If Robinson performs well and you have Ursery waiting, I think things can work out for the Texans long term.
Things will be much better.
With all the guys are on rookie deals, and the Colts get Ole Gordon.
Robinson was always more of a right tackle playing left tackle, and so, but if the scheme fits and he's able to hold the line long enough for the younger guy to develop, then this may go completely different in a year.
Right now, Blake Fisher out of Houston, Blake Fisher, the Notre Dame right tackle, is the Texans right tackle. Right now, he's the starting right tackle. So, and Ursery played right tackle when Daniel Falele was at Minnesota. So, Ursery can play either tackle spot at left tackle or right tackle, which Colts got Ole Gordon at 80 as a change of pace running back to Jonathan Taylor. Hunter Wohl, Wisconsin's safety, goes to the Bengals. And the Seahawks get Luke Lakey. I mean, they do have Noah Fant, but I really don't like the backups to Noah Fant now. They got this guy out of Michigan, 5th, 6th round pick in last year's draft. He was a backup to Colston Loveland, but I really don't see much in him. I think Luke Lakey would be a better fit for Seattle. And if you don't want to keep Noah Fant after this year, Lakey's the perfect tight end to replace him down the road. And Jalen Milroe fell to the Steelers at 83. I had to give the Steelers Milroe. I just couldn't leave Milroe on the board any longer, because even if Milroe is Malik Willis, Deshaun Kaiser 2.0, You can draft a quarterback next year when Pittsburgh hosts the draft in 2026.
Okay.
And if you get your guy and you have Matthew Golden and you have DK Metcalf, you have weapons for Milroe. You put him in a situation where he can succeed.
And that is the absolute truth.
Especially in round 3, if you're taking a guy like Milroe, that's a boom or bust. You got either you're a franchise guy, or if he doesn't work out, you can do whatever.
Yeah.
Because he's a 3rd-round pick.
Exactly.
You know, so
This is a great pick right here.
The athleticism, I think one GM said at the owners' meeting, if he's put with an explosive offense, he's going to make people shit their pants because of his athletic ability. But at the same time, if he's not put...
But if you put him in a situation like Pittsburgh and you get a receiver in the 1st round, you have weapons. You don't just have Freiermuth extended. You have Darnell Washington on a rookie deal for 2 more years. Even if Pickens leaves, you draft Matthew Golden at 21. Golden takes over for Pickens, and Roman Wilson takes over in the slot where Golden played as a rookie. And it's just...
Throw to the Steelers.
The big thing is you're looking at a Steelers team. It's a little bit of a transition. You've got a double, one of the brightest young wide receivers in the NFL.
Well, they extended they got Metcalf. Remember that Metcalf was on Seattle. They traded for him.
Yeah, they did get Metcalf.
And they gave him a 3-year extension after he had 1 year left on his deal. So Metcalf will be a Steeler for the next 4 years. Pickens will be the number 2 this year. But if you draft a receiver in the 1st round, you can just replace Pickens as the number 2 and let him walk, but keep him this year.
And the big thing on Miller, he is not accurate on the intermediate passes. That's what's dropping him down.
I feel like he can be accurate on his short and deep passes.
He needs to set his feet is what he needs to do. Clean up his mechanics similar to what Quinn Ewers did.
Pickens and, you know, the freaking monstrosity.
I think Milroe's issues stem more from his footwork than his accuracy, because I think he's got the arm, he's got the short and deep ball accuracy, but the intermediate needs to be cleaned up. I don't think it needs a total makeover, but it does need to be cleaned up to a degree. Scrambling, I saw him make 5 out of 6 progressions at the Senior Bowl. I didn't see that from him his first year at Alabama, but you said he did that. I mean, he only made 1 read in Alabama this year with the offense, and
Oh, God, that Alabama's offense this year was...
yeah, that's on the coaching staff.
And Milroe as my QB1, you know, this is a great place for him in the 3rd round, and Pittsburgh is the team that I would love to see him with because he would prove that he is QB1 of this class with that, just with that supporting cast.
Because it's the weapons. Tennessee's not really the greatest place for a QB1. I mean, you have
the pressure is not.
You have
there.
a lot of weapons.
Tennessee's
supporting cast isn't great, William. You have one receiver in Calvin Ridley. You have a left tackle in Dan Moore Jr., who I did not like. I thought he was the 3rd best tackle on Pittsburgh, but because Troy Fautanu got injured at right tackle and Moore refused to move to right tackle, they just decided to put Broderick back at right tackle since Moore had more experience there. And what do the Titans do? They pay Dan Moore Jr. $20 million a year for 5 years. He was the 3rd best tackle in the Steelers, and you're paying him $20 million for 5 years. That is not, and that's Milroe. That's going to be Cam Ward's left tackle for the entirety of his rookie deal. So,
yeah. And Cam Ward, he definitely might have some issues.
Even if you get the right receiver at 35 for Cam Ward, it's going to be an uphill battle because you're moving Latham, last year's left tackle, back to right tackle where he played at Alabama. So if Latham does not do well at right tackle in the NFL and Dan Moore Jr. sucks at left tackle, it's just it's a bad situation for Cam Ward to be in, because you won't be able to upgrade that offensive line until 2027 when the new stadium for the Titans opens. But
Plus being
Milroe at Pittsburgh is just a better situation.
Yeah, and Cam Ward being the number 1 overall pick has just that much more pressure on him. You know, no one's really talking about Milroe besides the 4.38 40 that he ran. You know,
Yeah.
and like I said,
I think I forget who said it, and I heard it. The situation really dictates the success of a player, and I forget who said it. It was a few days ago. I was at work, so I was just in passing, whatever. But the bottom line is, that is so true. If Jalen Milroe goes to Pittsburgh, 99% chance he becomes franchise quarterback.
Because right now their only other QB is Mason Rudolph. And Mason Rudolph might be able to be the bridge quarterback this year, but if he gets injured or Milroe or he just completely sucks and Milroe has to step in, I mean, that's...
Yeah, but he's still in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And that type of talent in Pittsburgh, that's going to succeed.
And right now, Pittsburgh has the best supporting cast for a team that does not have a franchise quarterback. With Metcalf, with all the weapons they have, so that could be the team that gets the steal of the draft.
Yeah, so, and if Cam Ward, in that situation, in the situation you just laid out, I could say Jalen Milroe has a better chance to succeed than Cam Ward, because Jalen Milroe is going to have all that infrastructure.
You're going to have Pickens. You're going to have Warren still in a rookie deal. Well, Warren's an ERFA, but you're going to have Freiermuth in Washington. You're going to have Metcalf. You're going to have Matthew Golden, Texas wide receiver, in a rookie deal, your first-round pick, and you're going to have Roman Wilson on a rookie deal for 2 more years. So yes, you're also going to have 4 offensive linemen on rookie deals. Broderick Jones, 2023 first-round picks, your left tackle. Troy Fautano's your right tackle. Zach Frazier is your center. And your right guard is Mason McCormick, South Dakota State guard that you were a big fan of last year. That would be his offensive line. So, yes.
Yeah, so
it
is so much into the environment that you're walking into. And I think that's why certain people need to walk into certain environments. And I think that's what makes this draft process so interesting. And if they think Milroe is the guy in round 2 or round 1, if you put him in Pittsburgh
traded their second-round pick to Seattle to get Metcalf. I would have mocked, but yeah, that's the thing.
Pittsburgh's that one team that can say, yeah, we can do this, and we can do it whenever we want, and we're going to be like, yeah, you can succeed there. No, this is Pittsburgh. And that's the environment. That's the environment you have. So drafting to the environment is incredibly important.
I could see why Pittsburgh would be hesitant about taking quarterback at 21, because if you take the wrong guy, you can't draft a quarterback next year when you host the draft, whereas you take Milroe at 83. If you get your quarterback in Milroe, you don't have to draft a quarterback when you host the draft next year. But if Milroe does awful as a rookie, then you can draft your guy, and you have a great supporting cast for the guy you draft if both Milroe and Mason Rudolph fail.
They already proved that with Kenny
Whether
Pickett.
It's Nussmeier or Aller or Arch Manning or whoever you want.
Nussmeier's going to blow up next year.
All right, I'm going to get the Buccaneers. I don't want to piss off Tony Mario. I mean, we've made him wait enough for his Buccaneers third-round pick. Well, I'm going to Kamon Rucker out of North Carolina.
I'll piss off Tony Mario.
I'd prefer if you didn't, but, you know, the Buccaneers, I mean, if you want to piss me off for comic relief, fine, but Tony's part of staff.
Is he related to Is he related to Michael Rucker?
And if I like Baker Mayfield, I'm going to go and I'm going to be nice to the Bucs.
But this is the thing with Kamon Rucker. If you draft him, he can compete with Yaya Diaby for that edge rusher job at right outside linebacker. Joe Tryon's no longer the left outside linebacker. And, yeah, maybe he starts there. But I think the Buccaneers are going to draft a pass rusher at a certain point in this draft.
Is Rucker related to the Carolina Panthers defensive end Rucker?
I have Kamon Rucker, North Carolina, pass rusher to the Buccaneers in round 3, but I gave the Buccaneers Nick Eamon-Wari in round 1, and I gave the Buccaneers Maxwell Harrison, the Kentucky corner, in round 2. So I went safety, corner, edge rusher for the Buccaneers. So I've gone all defense so far with Tampa.
I just don't see where the upgrade is. You trade away one of your better pass rushers, one of your young pass rushers, to draft somebody who's similar.
Well, they have Chris Braswell, too. They also have Chris Braswell, last year's second-round pick out of Alabama.
Yeah, because I do like the guy.
They have 3 high-end starters, but they don't have that Pro Bowl pass rusher that takes the top off. But they have 3 high-end starters in Diaby, Rucker, if they draft him, and Chris Braswell. 3 guys who can be high-end starters, but they don't have that sack artist. They don't have that Pro Bowl guy that puts them over the top.
I just guess I don't understand why you would trade away a good young pressure guy.
Joe Tryon lost Joe Tryon's a lot worse than you think he is. I know he's on the Browns now. I know he was their 2021 first-round pick, but Joe Tryon lost the starting linebacker job to Anthony Nelson.
Oh, I know. But at the same time,
it matters.
Is the guy that they drafted to replace him any better? And I say no. I mean,
they had 12 quarterback hurries in 2023, and he had 6 sacks, 3 quarterback hurries after coming back mid-season. I believe he can be better, but the problem... But there's not enough consistency to where he definitively is, because if there was, he'd be off the board by now. The key word is can be. Broncos get Mitchell Evans. Mitchell Evans is the 4th tight end in this draft who can run every route on the route tree. But because you have Evan Ingram and Adam Troutman, you can wait till the 3rd round to get your tight end. You don't have to take Loveland or Warren at 20 if you're the Broncos. You have Ingram from the Jaguars. You have Troutman, who knows Sean Payton's offense. You have the luxury of waiting till the 3rd round for your tight end if you're Denver.
Yes. Deep tight end class.
Let's face it, Ingram is one of the most underrated tight ends in football. The only reason he's underrated is because he's injured a good bit. You know.
And he's on Denver now.
If he is healthy, I have seen him live several times. That dude is a threat.
I agree.
He is a threat to get 100, 120 yards every game if he's healthy. And you have to account for that.
Yeah, and that's why I think that's why drafting a tight end is 20 doesn't feel right. If you believe Ingram and Troutman can stay healthy, then don't draft your tight end at 20. Because Troutman knows Sean Payton's offense. Sean Payton drafted Troutman in New Orleans, then he went to Denver. And he took the tight end job from Dulcich. So, yeah, the Chargers get Travian Henderson. Right now, the Chargers have Najee Harris replacing Dobbins, and you have Hassan Haskins replacing Hassan Haskins is basically your number 2, and Kamani Vidal's your number 3. Henderson's an upgrade over both guys, though. So, Travian Henderson, really nice change of pace back that complements Henderson in the 3rd round. And the best player on my board.
Is a
quality back.
1st to 2nd round talent that is inconsistent and injury prone. But when he is on, he may be the 2nd best running back in this class when he's on.
Yeah.
When he's healthy. If you can find a coach.
But we have a running back run, though.
That can keep him healthy and motivated and in the game. Oh, baby, you are going to have one of the best running backs in the game. Yep.
And this is a running back run. We have 3 consecutive running backs being picked.
Let's go.
Packers got Taj Brooks. I did not like Marshawn Lloyd coming out of USC. Emmanuel Wilson's a nice UDFA, but I like Taj Brooks better. I mean, Taj Brooks was great in pass protection when I watched his tape last night. And Brooks had 2 seasons of over 1,100 yards. Taj Brooks is the backup to Josh Jacobs. That was the best player on the board.
Taj Brooks is a good pass catcher, great pass blocker.
He is.
He's very good.
He just checked off a lot of boxes for me.
He just
built like a bowling ball.
indicated a year and a half ago that he was, maybe 2 years ago, I don't know.
He had 2 seasons of 1,000 yards. Yeah.
Yeah, he was going to be one of the better running backs in this class. So I think that would be a great pick for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And starting running backs going in probably.
And then the Jaguars got a running back too. Damian Martinez fell to Jacksonville, and I know they have ETN and Bigsby. Bigsby for 2 more years and ETN for 1. I think they have ETN for 1 more year because the 5th-year tender.
Miami of Florida.
I went with Martinez to Jacksonville because they don't really have that established 3rd-string back. You do have ETN and Bigsby, but I don't think either guy's done enough to earn an extension yet. So why not draft Martinez to complement both of them? Worst case, why not draft Martinez to complement both of them? Worst case scenario, you got a very good 3rd-string running back, and best case scenario, you got your replacement to Bigsby and ETN on a rookie deal. So it's very advantageous for Jacksonville to take him with this Vikings 3rd-round pick.
If you paid attention to Miami of Ohio, which I did because I was scouting quarterbacks quite a bit this year.
Miami, Florida.
Sorry, Miami, Florida. I'm a Mac guy.
To be with
he would hit the hole quick. He would hit it hard, and he would be able to one cut very, very well. Why the hell is he not getting?
I have him at like 70 on my board, but there's so many teams.
I'm going to tell you why.
All right.
He doesn't have a second year. He is a first-round prospect, but because he doesn't have a second year, he's going to be 2nd to 3rd round. He is not going to run away from people. He will get 4 to 7 yards a pop. He will break a 20-yard run here and there, but he's not going to break that 40 or 50 yard. He's not going to run away from people.
Look, he does everything well. Speed's there, the pass catching's there, the ball carry vision's there. I saw him win a pass blocking rep against Georgia Tech. And he did have 1,000 yards at Oregon State last year when Fuaga and Gray were the tackles. And he did win the freshman running back. He did win the Oregon State running back job as a freshman before, and he had the big sophomore year before transferring to Miami. So he is good. He's always been good, but like second gear is the big thing.
He doesn't have that second gear.
But you're putting him in a situation where worst case he's a 3rd stringer his rookie year or his first 2 years, and then by year 2 he's a change of pace back, and by year 3 he's a starter. I think he could start before then. Depends on what happens with ETN and Bigsby. How short of a leash do they have?
If what you say is right and he goes to the Jags, I can see him taking the Nick Chubb type approach where they have him start out 2nd string, and then he earns that 1st string spot, and he never looks back.
That's kind of what I thinking could happen. That's the best case scenario. And the worst case scenario, he's either a change of pace or a complimentary running back. But at this point, the 3rd round, you got nothing to lose by gambling on him. Texans, I went with an edge rusher here. I went with Ashton Gillott out of Louisville. You got Hunter, you got Will Anderson, you got Barnett. Jerry Hughes is gone. You need that 4th defensive end. And Ashton Gillott had a really good 2023 campaign. Ashton Gillott had a great 2023 campaign with 10 tackles for a loss, 10 sacks. I mean, the sacks plummeted in 2024, but he still managed to get so I had everything right. So Ashton Gillott had 14.5 tackles for a loss, 11 sacks, and 6 quarterback hurries in 2023. In 2024, he only had 4.5 sacks after having 11, but he had 10 quarterback hurries and still had 10 tackles for a loss. So even though he may not be a sack artist, he's consistently getting pressure on the quarterback, and you're getting him as that number 4 defensive end to replace Jerry Hughes. And Hunter's in a contract year. Barnett's in a contract year. Will Anderson's going to have a 5th-year tender after this season, and you don't have that extra edge rusher in the scenario where both Barnett and Hunter leave. So Ashton Gillott, I know it's an unconventional pick, but even though he didn't consistently sack the quarterback, he did consistently get tackles for loss and quarterback hurries. So And I do have a third-round grade on him. And he's lined up at both left end and right end. I mean, he did a good job dropping back in coverage this year, too. Demonstrated the rip and swim moves. He just has to improve as a run stuffer. So I do have a third-round grade on Ashton Gillott. I know it's a little bit of an unconventional pick, but I think Gillott's a really good fit for the Texans, Joey. So I went with him here at 89. Rams, they got Donovan Edwards. They got Kyron Williams and Corum. They don't have a third string back. Donovan Edwards was my top running back on the board. I know that's probably my worst pick in this mock. I'll take responsibility for that. The Ravens, they get a receiver. They get Ricky White III. He's the one guy left in this draft who can beat out Devontae Walker for the number 4 job. And when DeAndre Hopkins leaves in 2026 after his one-year deal, Ricky White can take over as slot receiver next to Flowers and Bateman. And if Bateman leaves after his rookie deal's up, he could potentially be the number 2 next to Zay Flowers down the road. So this is just a really good fit for Ricky White. I mean, you're getting a player who could potentially be a number 2 guy next to Flowers in 2 years, and you could ease him into that slot role. You don't have to play him now. So Ricky White III made a lot of sense for the Ravens here.
I have never been the biggest fan of Ricky White. Yeah, but in this spot, I think you picked a very nice spot for him. He would be a third or fourth round receiver, and he is very good at returning kicks or punts. So he would be an instant asset on special teams with potential in the next couple of years to rise up. So while he has been, in my opinion, he didn't impress the combine. He didn't impress as much in college as he impressed you.
I mean, he had 2 seasons of over 1,000 yards, and he had 79 receptions each of the last 2 years. And I saw 25 out of 30 routes. In 4 games, I saw 25 out of 30 routes. In the 2 games against Boise this year, Syracuse and Fresno State, I saw 25 out of 30 routes. And he's a good run blocker on film, too. It's just that 4.6 140 is what is leaving a lot of people with a sour taste in their mouth. That 4.6 140 time is leaving a lot of people with a sour taste in their mouth.
At worst, he could be Donald Peoples-Jones. At best, he could be Nico Collins. And which one do you want? Which Michigan receiver are you looking one way or the other at? Because one is now really, really freaking successful, and the other is out of the league. So I think he could go either way on one of those directions.
Yep.
I think Nico Collins or BPJ.
Because I do think he could be the slot receiver next year. Because remember, Bateman got a 5th-year tender. So I think Bateman enters the final year of his contract, and 2021, 2022, 2023. Yeah, so Bateman's in the final year of his 5th-year tender, probably won't get extended. So White would probably redshirt this year, but then he would be the number 2 guy next to Flowers in 2026. But, I mean, he works well as a number 2. You are taking some risk with the 40 time, but the route tree's there. A lot of traits that you like are there. And you're not drafting him as a number 1. You're drafting him as a number 2. I gave the Lions Princely Umanian. Umanian's a guy we talked about last year, ended up going back to college, entered the portal, went to Ole Miss. 13.5 tackles for a loss, 10.5 sacks, 14 hurries for Ole Miss this year. He really dominated against Georgia. He was doing to Carson Beck what Nelson Muntz does to Bart Simpson on a daily basis. I mean, he just bullied Beck in that game. I mean, he was winning double teams. He showed the ability to stop the run, drop in coverage, had a good swim move. I really just want to see him improve his rip moves on tape. I think everything else is there. Swim moves are there. Coverage is there. Ability to win double teams is there. Stopping the run is there. I think everything else outside of improving his rip moves is there with Princely now. I feel a lot more comfortable after picking him this year versus watching his 2023 tape. I wouldn't blame a team for picking him in the first round, but at this point in the third round, you have Aiden Hutchinson, you have Davenport, you have Pascal entering the final year of his rookie deal. Why not just draft Princely as that 4th edge rusher and reload so that if Davenport and Pascal leave, you have Hutchinson and Princely on a rookie deal?
That's what I've
Just
been
makes a
saying
lot of sense for
about the
Detroit.
Lions needing another pass rusher.
Yeah, you do.
And definitely, man. And
Because
I mean, they can take some.
Davenport couldn't stay healthy last year, and while I like Pascal, he hasn't moved the needle enough to keep that job. I mean, that's the reason the Lions traded for Zadarius Smith. They were hoping he'd fill that void.
Mr.
And
Cameron
he did a good job. And Pascal did a good job starting when Hutchinson was injured.
Yeah.
I gave the Saints Cam Scatebo. I know it sounds dumb, but right now, Kendre Miller is the number 2 running back behind Kamara. And I think Scatebo's better than Kendre Miller. I'll just come out and say
He breaks tackles, man, runs so low to the ground. And I mean, he just literally,
I believe he will beat out Kendre Miller for the backup job. And I think everything's there. The speed, the pass catching, the ball carrier vision. And the Browns got a running back too. They got RJ Harvey out of Central Florida. This is a guy who probably is the most elusive back in the draft. If I were grading a running back just on spin moves and elusiveness on the load, I would probably have Harvey as my top running back. And if Nick Chubb doesn't come back, I think RJ Harvey can step in and be that day one starter. So I went Abdul Carter, Josh Simmons.
Here's something I've heard on this thing. Even if the Browns draft a running back late, because they're probably going to.
Well, 94 is not late.
In contact with Nick Chubb, getting numbers for all his visits, Denver, New England, and a couple other places. And they may bring back Nick Chubb and draft the guys, one of the guys you have late in this, and say, go at it, kids. You now have a great locker room leader that's going to teach you to be great. All you have to do is follow the leader. So your assessment on drafting a running back mid to late may be very, very, very correct. Because I'm hearing that Nick Chubb, the only thing they're doing right now is comparing prices. And that's why Nick Chubb hasn't signed yet, because they're just comparing prices for the Browns salary cap.
But yeah, the thought process is correct. I'm not sure the Browns go the route I suggest, but you get Carter Hunter at 2, you get a left tackle at 33. If one of the top 32 falls to you, you get your QB at 67, and you get your running back at 94. It's a very simple thought process, and you address all the needs.
Your thought process is correct. This is just something I've been hearing over the last day or two. So it's not like, it's something that's been going on for 2-3 weeks I've been sick on. It's just something I've heard over the last day or two. But if that is correct, then you're going to have Nick Chubb, and as you state, a very young, very talented. I want
RJ Harvey out of Central Florida. I mean, he had 16 rushing yards in 2023, 1577 this year, ran a 4.4 flat, and he's the most elusive back in the draft. He is better at executing a spin move than any running back in this class. So
he popped on film watching.
I love that. I
Rice Plumlee.
Whether you're a defensive end or a running back, the spin move to me is
same. It's like my go-to on Madden.
Who has tried to tackle somebody doing a spin move, and I absolutely hate those people. It's a very difficult thing to corral.
Hey, here's the Chiefs.
Master it. There's nobody that can stop you.
Yeah. My phone's at 5%. We got 7 picks left in the mock draft. Okay, Chiefs. I went with Riley Mills. Now, why'd I wait so long to go defensive tackle? I went Connerly in round 1. In round 2, I went Denzel Burke. I needed to get a number 2 corner next to McDuffie. And in round 3, I saw an opportunity that was too good to pass on. You can buy out Jawan Taylor next year and save $20 million in cap space. So if somebody like Jonas Savannah out of Arizona drops to 66, you have to pick Jonas Savannah so you can buy out Jawan Taylor, and Mahomes has good protection. So I went left tackle, corner, right tackle. I know it's unconventional. I know it sounds stupid, but I was thinking long term. But you lost Derek Nottie, you lost Wharton. You got to get a defensive tackle next to Chris Jones. Riley Mills out of Notre Dame.
It's not stupid. It's like the old Marines always said. If it looks stupid, but it works, it's not stupid. So go with that.
So, yeah, we got Savannah to replace Jawan Taylor at right tackle, but the Chiefs still get their defensive tackle at 95. They get Riley Mills out of Notre Dame, and they pair him with Chris Jones. So, left tackle, corner, right tackle, defensive tackle, and Jalen Moore, who you signed to a 2-year deal, moves to left guard to replace Thuney. And you just reload.
Oh, man, look at these Eagles here.
They get Mason Taylor at LSU. I mean, the Eagles have Dallas Goedert, Grant Calcaterra. They got Harrison Bryant on a 1-year deal, Kylan Granson on a 1-year deal. But I gave him Mason Taylor at 96.
Taylor tore up his pro day, man.
Yeah, he dominated his pro day. I mean, he can run every route on the pro day, former 5-star recruit in high school. I've got 5 tight ends that run all 30 routes. Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, Harold Fannin Jr., Mitchell Evans, and Mason Taylor. Taylor's probably the best run blocker outside of Warren and Loveland.
He's built a lot like his dad with that flexibility.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely.
You know,
comp picks, Vikings, I went Dorian Strong. Byron Murphy and Mekhi Becton are going to be back. Becton's back from a seasoning injury, but the Vikings brought in Isaiah Rodgers and Okudah. Those are both stopgaps at this point. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers couldn't. I mean, he's on the Eagles last year, but he was basically a role player on the Eagles, and Okudah went from being a top 3 corner to struggling to remain the number 4 corner. And now those two would be competing for nickel. So now you have to draft another guy to push those two. And Dorian Strong, I gave him an A- in man coverage. He actually did a great job in man coverage against Cam Ward, but he struggled in zone coverage. He also struggled in press coverage, inconsistent with backpedaling, struggling to keep his hips straight. His feet are pointed diagonally away from receivers, doesn't play with the physicality, takes bad angles. There's a lot of sloppiness with Dorian Strong in zone and press, but he is very good in man coverage. And if you draft him as a nickel corner on a man coverage team like the Vikings, he can thrive in that role. But if you put him anywhere else on a zone heavy team, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
So
player that probably wouldn't be on my board at all if he's just a one-trick pony like that.
I like Dorian Strong, though. He's a good fit for the Vikings.
Just got him, late and didn't spend much on him, I mean,
no, we're not done with quarterbacks, guys. I have one more coming off the board. Best player on my board at 98 was Ohio State quarterback Will Howard. So the Dolphins, they draft Will Howard right now.
This is a great pick, and here's why I'm going to tell you why.
Right, before you tell me why, let me tell you the current backups to Tua Tagovailoa. Okay. Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle. That's your plan B if Tua goes into concussion protocol. Either Zach Wilson or Tim Boyle.
Yeah, they almost killed Tua freaking.
I mean, Chris Greer is just setting up Mike McDaniel to fail with those two.
For real, man.
Absolutely. And here's the thing about Howard. I've watched a lot of Howard tape because there's a lot of hype about him after the playoffs. I said his big thing is he doesn't perform in big games. Here's why. He holds the ball when he throws it, short to intermediate, it's almost like a shot put. He holds that thing and releases it damn near at his chest. It's just horrific hold on the ball release point.
I mean,
when he throws deep, he holds it higher. That's why he's got such good deep accuracy.
We can't.
He holds it high when he throws it deep. Now, he needs to learn the fundamentals. He needs to hold that thing at least at. I know I'm going to sound a little farther away here because I'm actually holding my hands where he needs to hold his hands. And he needs to hold his hands up at least right above his armpit, right at his shoulder, right at his least he needs to hold it at. You cannot hold that ball and release it down around his chest area. He needs to hold it up. And then he needs to go up higher when he's throwing deep. That will correct a lot of his issues. They say his arm strength in it, it's like I told G. Bush this morning when he was doing his podcast. I told him, release versus boom.
I have Milrow at 83 on my big board, and I have Will Howard at 85. But there's not a team.
You can boom.
All right.
All the time. Boom. Boom.
You know,
My phone's at 3%. We've got 5 more picks to break down. But I've only got Howard 2 spots below Milrow on my board. But after Pittsburgh, there just wasn't a QB needy team. And I just think Will Howard, 64 for 67 at his pro day, he's too talented to slip to day 3. Somebody's going to pick him, whether it's the Vikings,
Very
the backup,
talented.
McCarthy, the Dolphins, the Rams. Somebody's going to pick Will Howard in the comp part of 3rd round. Maybe the
Automatically
Raiders trade up
comes
for
in
him.
as a high quality backup. I mean, he is automatically that.
Power, I would love to break him down more because I love breaking down quarterbacks like that.
Yeah, and with the Dolphins is the one team where the weapons in Miami might be upgrades over the weapons at Ohio State with Hill and Waddle. But 4 more picks left. Giants got Wyatt Milam out of West Virginia. He actually began his career as a right tackle, moved to left tackle after his freshman year. But the Giants, they have Thomas and Illuminor at left and right tackle. The current backups for the Giants are James Hudson of the Browns and Stone Force at the former Seahawks backup right tackle. They also have Joshua Izudu, their 22 third-round pick, as the third-string left tackle. Evan Neal's the third-string right tackle. So why Milam? Milam was the best player on my board. And the Giants, even though I like Illuminor, he's just a stopgap at right tackle. That's the reality. So screw it. We're rolling the dice on Milam here. The value's there. It just makes a lot of sense. And if you don't pick Milam, the 49ers will. So you got to pick him.
Schoen has screwed up that team pretty bad. And like I said, that is a great pick they definitely need it.
I do like Illuminor's pass blocking, run blocking, zone blocking, but the pass blocking footwork, run blocking footwork, pass blocking strength, run blocking strength has got to improve on Milam's end if he wants to become anything more than a swing tackle. But I do like him enough to where I would take a flyer on him this late in the 3rd round. I gave the Niners Nick Jackson of Iowa, first only player who did not attend the combine that made day 2. Nick Martin, Oklahoma State, went to the Rams. As a 34 middle linebacker for depth behind Omar Spites and Nate Landman. And to wrap up the 3rd round, Barrett Carter, the player West mocked to the Lions in our group mock. That is the last pick in this draft. But yeah, that is the 3-round mock. Overall, any thoughts before we sign off? The phone is at 2%, but I will let you and Joey rant about this. We've spent a lot of time. I probably do need to get back to the editing the mock draft, editing round 4. I probably do have an email from Tony. Yeah, I do. I was sorry, must have forgot. Membu won't be there for the Jets in the 2nd round. Maybe not, Tony, but I have a I have a 6th-round grade on Membu. I'm not mocking him in the 1st round. Frankly, I don't want to mock him until the 3rd round, but the reality is the Jets will pick him if he's there at 42. That's the reality.
The pick that I really have to say something about is that Ravens pick of Colson Loveland. You know, that would be great for the Ravens. However, you know, I'm not sure if they would do that, you know, and it was just kind of, I'm not sure that's the one pick, like I said, that I have a bone to pick with him about. But other than that, you know, the linebacker that you just said, San Francisco, they're definitely going to drop one, you know, after losing Greenlaw. I mean, he was the heart of the defense.
Yeah.
Other than that, you know, that's about all I got. Joey, if you want to finish.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll give you guys. All right, we're at 2%. I'm going to do something really quickly here. I posted a tweet this morning.
I want to go real quick.
I got some. We're not going to. Okay. All right. 2%.
The quarterbacks are going to go a lot higher than you think they are. Running backs are going to go a lot higher than you think they are. And then defensive tackles are going to be in surplus. They're just going to go off the board, period. So that's something you got to look at in the draft.
Very well, but I'm going to give you something else. The more I look at the top 11 of the 2026 NHL draft, the more I believe it's the most top-heavy draft since 2015, when you had Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner, Zach Werenski, Timo Meier, and Mikko Rantanen in the top 10. I tweeted this morning, but looking at the top 11 right now, this is the top 11. You have Gavin McKinnon at number 1, Ryan Ruberek, who was once the favorite to go first overall over Matthew Schaefer in the 2023 OHL draft at center. He's your number 2 player. Ivor Stenberg, who can play left winger, right winger in Sweden, got promoted to the SHL and Frölunda's the 3rd best player. You have Ryan Lynn. He was the first defenseman since Scott Niedermayer to get 50 points at age 16 in the Western Hockey League. And Niedermayer was a beast with the New Jersey Devils. And Ryan Lynn was not the only defenseman to get 50 points as a 16-year-old this year. Landon DuPont, top pick in 2027, also did that. Keaton Verhoff, I just love Keaton Verhoff's tape. I've already watched 2 games of his tape. I think he's if he looks better than Matthew Schaefer did last year. Vigio Bjork entered the year as the number 2 player, but it's not that Bjork sucks. It's just the top 5 is that exceptional, so he drops to 6. Matthias Preston is their top right winger in the draft, 24 goals, 22 assists. That's the 7th best player. Ethan Belchitz went number 1 in the OHL draft last year, had a great rookie season. He's projected to go 8th in this draft. Daxton Rudolph, he went number 1 in the WHL draft ahead of Ryan Lynn and Keaton Verhoff. He's a defenseman on the Prince Albert Raiders. That's my number 9 player. I have Tynan Lawrence, 24 goals, 28 assists, 52 points as a rookie on the Muskegon Lumberjacks, taking over for Sasha Boiver at 10. And rounding out that 11 is Adam Nemec, Simon Nemec's younger brother, who went to the New Jersey Devils. Very stacked top 11. Easily the best top 11 I've seen since 2015 in terms of star power. And all these guys are dominating in their +1 draft year. Honestly, I think McKenna would go number 1 over everyone in this draft, and I think every other player I mentioned would go 3rd behind Schaefer and Misa. That's how stacked next year's NHL draft is. So I quickly wanted to mention that before we signed off. My phone is at 2% still, so I think we handled business. I mean, we got everything in. If you want to check out the OHL draft live stream, that was up on YouTube yesterday. 180 views. Thank you guys so much. But yeah, we are going to sign off. William's got to run soon. Joey's got to run.
Also,
my phone.
We have a very special episode of Under the Bleachers
Wednesday. Daniel Kelly.
With Daniel Kelly, a 1st-round mock. And tune in, guys. Thanks for viewing.
The guy who got William back into this business. And he's fun to talk with. I mean, we did an episode on Bo Nix and Shedeur Sanders a year ago when the audio and restream was kind of choppy. Before we had the new Draft Utopia logo, before we had all this cool stuff, before we really mastered our game, and now we get to talk football with Daniel Kelly Wednesday night at 8:30. That is going to be a blast. But yeah, my phone's at 1%. I am going to sign off, though. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, William. Have a good day, everybody. And I got to get back to the group mock and my mock. So, yeah.
Later, guys.